This is Drama Shinobi, and today I'm going to narrate second part of what if evil Naruto was trained by Manslayer and corrupted Sasuke. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
The sound of a window breaking in his apartment woke Naruto from his dream. He was aware that the living room near the front door had the only window. He had thus dashed into the vicinity of his window, only to quickly avoid a load of shuriken that became stuck in a wall. However, Naruto moved so quickly that it almost seemed as though he had just materialized, standing on the couch with his sword already drawn and securely grasped. Naruto even brought his sword to bed with him, just like his sensei. The intruder, with a tangle of gray hair and a Chunin vest, stood next to his broken window. Even so, it wasn't as disheveled as the gray hair of the Chunin guard he encountered on his first day in the Leaf. The man's eyes gleamed with murderous madness, and he was grinning haughtily. The blonde samurai spoke after a minute of the intruder and Naruto staring at each other. "Why did you break into my apartment?" The Chunin were more than willing to respond to the straightforward query. "So, it is true you are in this village, aren't you, demon brat? The security is so lax here that I was able to steal the scroll of forbidden seals," he replied. "Then again, that's not a big surprise considering that this village would let a demon come back here, but it certainly will not be a surprise when you're blamed for stealing it after I kill you, of course." When Naruto showed no response to his threat at all, the Chunin's somewhat insane laughter stopped. Naruto asked, "How did you find my apartment?" But he had a secret thought. "Well, Kyuubi brat, the only secret the Hokage was able to keep was your location, until now, of course." The old man is so senile that he actually stored a copy of all of Konoha's citizen and ninja records in the same room that contained the forbidden scroll of seals. "I only came across those records after I became curious about what else I could find. It was just sheer accident, hey. So I guess it ain't the old man's fault this time, huh, demon brat? But then again, perhaps it is if he was stupid enough to leave sensitive records like that in the same room with the forbidden scroll. This time your luck is going to run out, demon." The wind from the broken window caused Naruto's hair to ominously dance, allowing the intruder to see his sad face and intense blue eyes more clearly. His whole body was bathed in moonlight. Naruto appeared to be an angel of darkness at that precise moment, as though he were depicted in a painting. When Naruto appeared, the Chunin shuddered a little. The blonde swordsman was simply unsettling. But the Chunin summoned his courage and spoke. "I've seen real samurai, and I seriously doubt that there's any difference between them here and those in Japan. You think your pitiful samurai skills will stand a chance against a real ninja, little boy? I know all the stories about you and your master, nothing but a bunch of superstitions, horror stories told at night to keep people entertained. It makes no sense. What good can a puny katana do against the massive arsenal of a trained ninja, huh, kid?" The Chunin smirked haughtily. "It's nothing ultimately. You're all just a group of punks posing as less than authentic ninjas, like me," the Chunin remarked. "Odd," Naruto said, titling his head. Similar ideas about samurai were held by an Anbu captain before he was reduced to nothing more than a torso with a head and one leg. He clung to these ideas. An example of the Bakumatsu period. He and you are among the few ninjas who continue to hold the view that all samurai are less than human. Ninjas like you continue to disregard the threat posed by a Japanese samurai in order to maintain your ego, despite all the evidence of their strength. In result, you avoid reality and live in a fantasy world where ninjas are supposed to be a type of warrior that are rivaled or surpassed by none." Naruto sighed. "It's basically going into denial," he said. "You still prioritize your pride over your survival, the height of conceit that many ninja have acquired over the years. You're just a kid brat," the intruder snarled. "In the end, that's all you are. The child is engaging in a man's game. Yes, a demon kid, but a kid nonetheless. If you truly believe you can defeat me, you are the only one living in a fantasy world, but we'll put that to the test right now if you genuinely think a samurai can be on par with a ninja." "My name is Mizuki Demon," the Chunin said with a final haughty grin. "Remember that name in hell after I rip you apart." Before the blonde spoke, Mizuki pulled out a massive shuriken from behind his back and got ready to hurl it at Naruto. "And like the apparent majority of everyone in this village, you believe the Kyuubi and I are the same being," he said. "For all the perspective thinking ninjas are supposed to have, it seems the Leaf Village lacks in that department more than anything else." Mizuki looked at Naruto, startled, and stopped preparing to toss the giant shuriken. "You know of the Kyuubi?" Mizuki burst out laughing after Naruto simply nodded his head. "Yeah. You'd have to be real dumb to be unable to figure it out. I mean, with people calling you Kyuubi brat and all that just makes it better, demon," he roared. "Now you'll die with the knowledge that you're the fox demon who caused so much destruction to the Leaf years ago." Mizuki began to cry, but his insane grin persisted. "Demon, die knowing that you were killed by a ninja who was one of many that lost his family and comrades to you," he declared. "That in the end, you're nothing more but an inferior beast beneath the feet of a ninja, just like samurai are meant to be. Naruto was the target of Mizuki's enormous shuriken. Die demon brat. In case the weapon he had thrown only hurt the blonde or missed him completely, the insane Chunin rushed in at Naruto, prepared to kill him. Behind the approaching thrown weapon, Naruto saw Mizuki charging at him. The young samurai immediately came up with a strategy to deal with this intruder. Naruto's head and body fell to the ground separately as the giant shuriken smashed right through his neck, killing him instantly. Naruto's blood spattered all over him because the Chunin was so close behind the thrown weapon. Surprised by how quickly the Batusei's alleged apprentice was vanquished, Mizuki halted his charge. He didn't anticipate that Naruto would defeat him once he faced him head-on, but he did anticipate that the youngster would be quick enough to avoid a projectile. The Chunin laughed gleefully at his kill, shrugging his shoulders and thinking that the only mistake he had made was to assume that Japanese samurai were stronger than he had just witnessed. He would now be well known for accomplishing something that even the Yondaime were unable to do. No Kitsune, kill the Kyuubi. Mizuki soon began to laugh uncontrollably as a look of insanity took over his face. He was aware that he would not face punishment if he proved he had killed the demon on his own, even if he was discovered to be the real thief of the Forbidden Scroll. Of course, the naive old prune of a Hokage would do everything in his power to punish the Chunin. After all, the Sandaime had grown so old that they no longer gave a damn about such filth. However, Mizuki was aware that the dead demon is despised by the council and almost everyone else in the village. This implies that Mizuki would have the support of the entire village, including the council. There would be more than enough people to reverse any retribution or punishment the Hokage tried to inflict on him. After a moment, Mizuki considered staying simply to satiate his curiosity about what would happen if he was exposed as the Kyuubi's murderer. He would be revered as a hero. Mizuki decided to stick with his plan to leave Konoha and join Orochimaru. After giving it some thought, he was more interested in acquiring power than anything else. Despite the fact that he liked the idea of fame and fortune and he believed that Otogakure was the only location where he could acquire the greatest power before he turned traitor against his village, he firmly believed that Orochimaru, one of Konoha's Sannin, would grant him that power. Mizuki grinned malevolently at his choice and started to move away from the decapitated body in front of him to retrieve the large scroll he had dropped, but then he started to feel warm all over. The Chunin's eyes narrowed, bewildered before he looked at his own body and gasped in shock. He had no idea what was making him feel this way. Now the blood was literally boiling all over him. Waves of steam were rising from the red liquid. The warmth he had experienced just moments before was now gradually beginning to burn. Mizuki clenched his jaw in agony. What is this? The dead demon appeared to be melting into a pool of blood, which made Mizuki even more alarmed. He was startled out of his growing panic by a quiet voice from the darkness. It's a blood clone. Mizuki spun around to look in the direction of the voice. No, it can't be, Mizuki whispered. I killed him. Naruto cautiously emerged from the shadows and into the moonlight, seemingly confirming Mizuki's suspicions. For some reason, he had his eyes closed, but he still had that eerie appearance. That blood all over you is still my own blood, but years ago I found out that combined with my blood, these sort of clones can be used for something else. Mizuki simply blinked, perplexed. Buddha, it's just blood demon, he remarked. I don't understand. Naruto let out a sigh. Nor will you or many people understand, Mizuki. I don't even understand it yet, but for some reason, that blood all over you is going to burn you alive since it came from my body. Goodbye. Before the blood on his body abruptly caught fire, Mizuki's eyes grew wide with horror. As the fire continued to spread throughout his body, Mizuki let out a painful scream. Before he knew anything more, the betraying Chunin saw a pair of terrifying amber eyes. At this point, Mizuki was reduced to a heap of ash. Naruto stared at his artwork before scowling at an idea that struck him out of nowhere. I'll have to clean up all of this ash now. There will be burn marks where all the blood used to be. This will take some time. Well, at least I'll have something to do in any case. I need something to distract me from all of these issues. He never once felt even the slightest remorse for his most recent murder. Rather than thinking about the Chunin he had killed, Naruto was too preoccupied with tidying up the mess that had resulted in his apartment. When Naruto opened his eyes after closing them, they had returned to their typical blue hue. Knowing that he had lost control with his bloodline once more, he let out a melancholy sigh. At least he always ensured that his victims died quickly. However, this time, his bloodline got so out of hand that he actually made sure Mizuki died a slow and agonizing death. And his entire being was struck down by the same old, persistent, and depressing feeling once more. The fact that Naruto's bloodline eliminated the same sadness that followed him everywhere was one of its greatest advantages. He had been grieving ever since Tomo and Kenshin passed away. All of Naruto's emotions aside from hatred were actually eliminated by his ancestors, but not in a way that prevented him from thinking clearly, quite complicated in terms of how it works. After clearing his head, Naruto went to get a dustpan and broom. When he came back, he started to sweep Mizuki's ashes off the floor and into that very same dustpan he had retrieved a while ago. Once he was sure the dustpan was full of ash, Naruto would dump all of it in a trash can. When Naruto had completed sweeping a dead man's ashes, he put the dustpan and broom back where he had found them. As Naruto was placing his broom back into a closet, he heard someone banging on his door very hard. At that, Naruto scowled. He didn't want another rude visitor, since he had already had one late at night. All he wanted to do was sleep. When he saw the key signatures behind his door, the blonde sighed. He opened the door slowly and turned to face his guests. The Hokage was standing there, accompanied by a few Anbu. After giving Naruto a long look, the Sandaime let out a sigh. "You killed this time, didn't you?" Naruto answered. "Yes, he was invading my home and intended to kill me. I was startled out of my sleep by his intrusion. I was just following my instinct from then on. If I hadn't been awakened from the attack, I could have had better control over my habit to kill. Forgive me, Hokage-sama. I'm trained to follow such an instinct when I'm awakened so abruptly." The Hokage let out a weary sigh. "It's okay, Naruto. I overlooked a possible situation like this, so I'll let it go. You have done well in controlling your habit of killing in self-defense. It seems you just weren't able to think clearly once you were awakened like that. That's why the instinct you were trained to follow was able to control you. Please try to get rid of that little habit as well, Naruto." Sarutobi let out another sigh. "I should have not overlooked a possibility such as this. I should have expected you to follow your instinct to kill when being awakened so suddenly. Since ninjas who have been in a war also tend to carry such a habit, it shouldn't be any different for samurai who go through the same ordeal as well." Naruto gave a nod. He questioned, "So what happens now?" The Hokage paused to reflect. "Since it's just a traitor, I don't believe the council will care if you killed him or not. Especially since he was aligned with Orochimaru," he stated regarding Mizuki's loyalty. "I had been suspecting that for a while. Orochimaru is one of our great village's most despised enemies, and the council will be happy that you killed such a traitorous ninja. After all, you are supposed to fight Konoha's enemies, and the council, and I also want you to support the Leaf by fighting traitors like Mizuki. And you shall assist the Leaf village by making ninjas think twice before committing betrayal," the Hokage said, lighting his pipe and taking a few puffs. With a swift bow, Naruto said, "As you wish, Hokage-sama. However, Naruto-kun, I am disturbed at the slow, painful death you gave to Mizuki," Sarutobi stated, adding that Leaf ninjas do not operate in that manner. "Therefore, I must beg you to never again deliver such a death to anyone, even if it is directed at this village's adversary. You know, quick deaths all the time?" With a nod, Naruto said, "Of course, Hokage-sama. Retrieve the skull that the traitor dropped on the floor and then secure the perimeter to ensure there are no more threats to Naruto," the Sandaime commandingly said, turning to face the Anbu. "After that, return to your posts." The Anbu obeyed and carried out their responsibilities as directed. "How did you know that I was aware of your kill, Naruto-kun?" the Hokage asked, returning his focus to Naruto. "You weren't shocked at all." "I saw the knowing look in your eyes, Hokage-sama," Naruto shot back. "You were aware that I killed that man for some reason. I doubt you would divulge such a secret to me, so I won't ask how. I had a strong feeling you were aware of my kill. It was simply a powerful, intense sensation, Hokage-sama. Does that answer your question?" "Yeah, I guess so, Naruto-kun," the Hokage said, gazing at Naruto in perplexity. "You're correct, though. I do intend to keep that specific secret to myself for reasons of security. You understand, my boy, I'm sure." Naruto remarked, "Of course, Hokage-sama." Although Naruto was telling the truth when he spoke of the Sandaime's knowing look in his eyes, the main reason Naruto knew the Sandaime was aware of his actions was because of his knowledge of the old man's crystal ball. The Hokage was relieved inside that Naruto was unaware of his secret method of spying on everyone and about his crystal ball. However, how was that specific secret known to Naruto? It all stems from his mother's loud mouth. When she and his uncle were younger, they would travel to Whirlpool for family reunions, and naturally, nobody in the Uzumaki family knew his uncle's job at the time other than that he remained in Japan. To the annoyance and dismay of his fellow Uzumakis, Kenshin consistently refused to respond to numerous inquiries about his life. In other words, Naruto's mother would constantly boast to her family about everything she knew about Konoha, including its weaknesses as the Yondaime's wife. She was also well versed in the Hokage's office, particularly the crystal ball that gave her husband the ability to spy on the entire village. Thus, all Kenshin had to do was tell Naruto everything his mother had told him about Konoha. However, Naruto wouldn't dare tell the Hokage that he knew about his crystal ball. If he did, the Sandame would probably have him watched much more closely. The only reason the Sandame didn't have Anbu constantly keeping an eye on Naruto was because of his conceit in his source of spying, as the old man obviously thought that the crystal ball would alert him to anything that Naruto wasn't supposed to be doing. The old man would be more inclined to think that Naruto could be watched closely enough without ever escaping detection in that crystal ball of his if the Hokage believed that Naruto was unaware of his spying. "Well, this has been a quiet night, hasn't it, Naruto-kun?" the Hokage said, clearing his throat. "I'll go ahead and get this window replaced by the landlord naturally. I'll cover the cost, saving you the trouble in order to pass your genin test tomorrow. You had better get enough sleep. Don't be concerned about what transpired here tonight. I'll handle everything." The Sandame turned to walk away, but before he could do so, Naruto spoke. "Hokage-sama, I want to know something," Naruto replied. "You mentioned that it was alright for me to kill traitors and enemies of the leaf." Naruto went on after the Hokage nodded. "But why couldn't I kill that Anbu captain when he attacked me the other day? Wouldn't he also be regarded as a traitor since he attacked a fellow leaf ninja? Additionally, you previously stated that I must experience a real childhood. Wouldn't that entire idea be ruined if you encouraged me to kill? In addition, I recall you saying that you didn't want me to defend myself against anyone who attacked me." As he considered how to respond to Naruto's inquiries, the Hokage started to perspire. "Well, you see, Naruto, I wasn't specific enough back then. I had intended for you to refrain from retaliating against any member of the Leaf Village. I didn't mean for you to refrain from retaliating against people in general. I'm sorry if this was unclear." The Sandame gave a tense laugh before Naruto answered. "However, wouldn't Mizuki be regarded as an employee of the Leaf? And if he's an exception because he was a traitor, then why wasn't that Anbu captain also an exception, Hokage-sama?" asked the blonde samurai. The Sandame quickly responded to Naruto, saying, "Well, I apologize, Naruto-kun. I have to go, and I don't have time to respond to the rest of your inquiries." He said, "I'll respond to them later, so don't worry now. Good night." The Sandame vanished in a swirl of leafy wind in an instant. With a sigh, Naruto closed his door and shook his head, knowing that the Hokage was merely dodging his inquiries and any confrontation that might arise from the old man's deception. After the landlord finished repairing his window, the blonde gave Naruto a brief glare before heading out. As he has been doing lately, Naruto let out another sigh before returning to his bed. Even though he was a deadly samurai at a very young age, Naruto needed to make sure he would have enough energy for his genin test tomorrow because he sensed it would be a long day. In the morning, Naruto woke up at 5 in the morning. No, he didn't have an alarm clock, and unlike the previous night, there was nothing to wake him up abruptly this time. Nope, after all these years, Naruto simply developed a mental alarm clock in his head. He had woken up that early so many times in his life that he just started doing it on autopilot, though this isn't all that surprising given that initially, officers and other samurai would wake him up along with many others. For their daily training or a battle on the battlefield, samurai in their homeland did have to get up early. Every aspect of a warrior's existence. Perhaps another major factor contributing to Naruto's accustomed early wakefulness was his former sensei's habit of dousing his face with a big bucket of cold water every morning when he failed to wake up on time. Before recollections of his dream returned, Naruto performed his morning exercises as usual. He then sat down slowly on a chair next to a small table and gazed out the window while he pondered. Even though Naruto's dreams don't give him the ability to see into the future, in fact, they have nothing to do with premonitions. They do give him a third-person perspective of a day in his past. Yes, some of Naruto's dreams are actually flashbacks of significant events in his life, and it was just by chance that the dream he had tonight was a real flashback of his arrival in Konoha. Oddly enough, Naruto never experienced a flashback dream involving Tomo and Kenshin's deaths. Then again, flashback dreams are Naruto's most detailed dreams, so it was understandable that the blonde was relieved that he wouldn't have to relive that tragedy in such a way. Naruto hoped he would never have such a dream about that specific crucial event. The young samurai wasn't sure he could handle having a detailed dream about Kenshin and Tomo's deaths, which already torment his memories every day. The main reason Naruto's flashback dreams were so beneficial to him was that the third-person view gave him the ability to see everything, and he could choose which view he wanted. As a result, he was obviously focused on the Hokage and Kakashi after the Anbu escorted him to the Sandame's office, as well as the conflict between him and that Anbu captain in the same office. It just so happens that this ability of view gives Naruto not only the ability to see what is happening, but also the chance to hear what is being said and thought, which is a huge advantage. After discussing this ability with his sensei, Naruto discovered that it was a very rare ability in the Uzumaki family, and that even for those very few who had it, there was something they had to go through to even attain, and Naruto has always had this ability with his dreams, which allows him to know what people say and think behind his back. Furthermore, information about this achievement had been lost for a long time. Once more, Naruto was fortunate to have luck. Naruto, however, hardly ever experiences these kinds of dreams, sometimes only once a year. Very uncommon, and it so happened that last night was one of those occasions. The first thing that came to mind when Naruto recalled his dream from last night was how everyone would call him Batuse's apprentice, or apprentice of the Batuse. Once more, a sorrowful smile appeared on his face. It's true that Naruto had previously told the Hokage that he wanted to be respected for his actions and recognized as himself. In addition, Naruto is currently officially the Batuse, an honor bestowed upon him by Japan's ruler. In all honesty, though, Naruto was relieved that people were still referring to him as the Batuse's apprentice, because if they were referring to him as the Batuse himself, the young samurai would be much more reminded of the death of his beloved sensei. Either Konoha and possibly many other ninja villages are so accustomed to calling him by that title that it just stuck, or news about him being the new Batuse had simply never reached Konoha. Sometimes, reality prevents people from forgetting unpleasant experiences. After that, Naruto had another thought about his dream. He recalled that he had not left Japan alone, but rather that an army of Anbu had practically gathered to accompany him as he made his way to the gates of Konoha. Even though there were enough Anbu to form an army, they would not have been large enough to act as an invasion force against Japan. Although there was an army of Anbu, it was still a small army, and even Japan's weakness would not have been sufficient to defeat the enigmatic nation. Not when that nation still had enough of the lethal samurai that Leaf Ninja appeared to be so anxious about, particularly those samurai who would fight to the death to protect their nation. Each Anbu member, however, only had enough cash to cover the cost of a ship ride to Japan and a return trip. It was a strange request, but Naruto and his country were in no position to deny Konoha this part of the agreement. The other part of the agreement between Konoha and Japan regarding Naruto's transfer was that the blonde samurai had to pay for his own ride across the seas. If he didn't, he would be refusing to go to Konoha, which would then result in Konoha invading Japan because of Naruto's alleged resistance. Japan was extremely fortunate that Konoha wasn't asking for more than that anyhow, but it seemed as though the Leaf Village made this arrangement merely to belittle Naruto or to deliberately start a conflict. The Sandaime were actually pressured by the majority of Konoha's council members to allow such a part of the agreement to occur because they wanted to start a war so they could expand Konoha's territory and either kill or acquire the demon brat all at once. They also thought that a victory over Japan would give the Leaf's village a higher status in the elemental countries because other ninja villages are afraid of Japan's samurai, which is true because many ninja from other ninja villages had various issues with those fierce warriors. Naruto had earned a lot of money as a samurai warrior during Japan's recent revolution, but he hardly spent any of it aside from cigarettes despite Konoha's restrictions on his ability to travel from Japan to Hai no Kuni. Being an apprentice of a well-known killing machine while fighting for your country's future can prevent someone from having the time or motivation to take care of themselves. Therefore, Naruto reasoned that there was no reason to be upset about paying for a ride that would only result in a small loss of his money. Later on, Naruto came to believe that members of Konoha's council had come up with such a deal just to get him upset so that the Leaf could invade Japan, and his belief was correct. Besides, Naruto had more important things to worry about than expecting someone to pay for a ride that would cost him pennies, even though to other people in Japan, the cost of a ride over such a long distance would be much more than pennies. In any case, there was something unique about the Anbu that Naruto was escorted by. For one thing, they were extremely quiet, not at all boisterous and arrogant like the usual enemy ninja that Naruto had come across. Secondly, Naruto sensed their aura and knew that they were more powerful than the other ninjas he had faced. If he had never seen such ninja before, he assumed that they were usually used to protect their village, and he was correct. Samurai used to be able to sense the power of their opponents by feeling their aura, which is a field of output energy that is generated from their ki and surrounds their entire body. Samurai use ki energy, which is different from chakra, which is an energy source that ninja rely on. However, samurai have learned from their battles with ninja that the more chakra a person has, the stronger their ki energy is, and therefore the more power that is felt from the individual's aura. In any case, these Anbu weren't as hateful as Naruto had anticipated. On the contrary, they were quite helpful. The Anbu escort's apparent leader explained that they were a part of a special Anbu division in Konoha called Root, which was led by a man named Danzo. They also explained that Danzo managed to fool the Sandaime into thinking he was sending regular Anbu, but in reality, the Sandaime thought he was sending Root Anbu. If the old man had known that Danzo was lying to him, the Hokage would not have sent in a special Anbu division that was supposed to have been disbanded long ago. The leader also told Naruto that Danzo wanted to meet with him at some point and that he had Root Anbu sent because he thought they would be more hospitable than any other Anbu that the Sandame could send because of the blonde's tenant. Additionally, he thought they would be better escorts for security reasons because their skills were better than those of a regular Anbu. Because the man wanted to recruit him into this Root Anbu force, Naruto naturally assumed that Danzo was being so friendly. He also assumed that there was some animosity between this Danzo person and the Hokage because Danzo was working behind the old leader's back. However, out of curiosity, Naruto made the decision that he would remember to meet with this Danzo person at some point to simply see what he has to offer. There was a tacit agreement between Naruto and the leader of Root Anbu that he would not discuss what he had been told with anyone else because, in theory, Danzo was giving Naruto a hand of trust by disclosing that Root Anbu were supposed to have been disbanded and by using his influence over the Hokage to have such Anbu sent to escort the young samurai. Additionally, Naruto was interested in meeting Danzo because it seemed that the Root leader shared his distaste for the current Hokage. When Naruto got to Hai no Kuni, the Anbu leader told him that although Konoha wanted him to be escorted all the way to Konoha, he was going to trust Naruto to travel the remaining distance to Konoha because of the threat Japan would face if Naruto fled. The blonde agreed, and the entire Root Anbu fled ahead to their village. Naruto reflected on that moment and was relieved that the Root Anbu had left him, otherwise, he would never have been able to see his friend Itachi as he did. Returning to the present, Naruto recalled last night's thoughts about the Hokage's crystal ball used for eavesdropping, and he smirked as he suddenly recalled that Kenshin had taught him how to detect the key energy the Hokage's crystal ball generates in order to determine when he is being watched by it. This is why Naruto was able to get away with what he did to Sakura yesterday, and why he felt secure during his conversation with the Uchiha. After clearing his mind, Naruto quickly changed into the samurai clothes he had worn to school the day before, ate some ramen for breakfast, completed the rest of his morning routine, and left for Training Ground 7, where he was to meet his team for the test that his so-called current sensei was going to administer. Afterwards, Naruto arrived at Training Ground 7 at 5:45 a.m. only to find it completely empty. He just shrugged his shoulders and sat down against a tree. He then brought himself into the lotus position. Naruto figured that since he did plenty of physical exercises at his house, he would just decided to meditate and wait for his teammates. It's not like Kakashi is going to show up early anyway, and it seems Kenshin sensei was right when he mentioned about ninjas tending to get up later than samurai do. Ninjas are so lazy. Sometimes my teammates are supposed to be actual warriors, yet they can't even get here early like I do, Naruto thought as he slowly closed his eyes and began his meditation. After an hour and 15 minutes, when Sasuke arrived on the scene at 7 a.m., he looked around for any of his teammates before spotting Naruto in his meditation position. The Uchiha stared at him in confusion for a minute before jumping into a tree and lying on one of its limbs. Sasuke fell asleep slowly because he didn't think it was a good idea to wake up his blonde teammate because most people are grumpy in the morning, and he wasn't going to risk upsetting Naruto after seeing him get angry yesterday. As for Naruto, he simply allowed a tiny smile to appear on his face after sensing Sasuke's fear. After that, the peaceful and quiet morning continued. An hour later, Sakura finally arrived at the training ground. Barely awake, she looked around the area for a short while before spotting Naruto, at which point she became much more awake and terrified. She was still confused and worried about what Naruto had done to her yesterday. Last night, she had barely slept in the hospital because the incident was still fresh in her mind. The combination of fear and attraction she felt towards the blonde seemed to be a strain on her mind. She approached him slowly and simply stood there, gazing at him with fascination, unable to get his serene, tranquil appearance out of her memory. When Sakura first arrived, Naruto himself was aware of her presence, but he quickly grew weary of her staring at him and slowly opened his eyes to stare back at her. Sakura was unaware of Naruto's recognition of her existence for a minute until she noticed the clear crystal blue of his eyes staring back at her, at which point she quickly turned her head and blushed in embarrassment at being caught staring at him. Naruto simply squinted at her, noticing the blush she was trying to cover up. "Sakura, is there something you want?" he inquired. Before realizing that her sensei and other teammates were missing, the pink-haired girl frantically tried to come up with a reason to avoid looking foolish. "Good morning, Naruto-sama," she said. "I apologize for bothering you, but I wanted to know if you saw Sasuke-kun or Kakashi-sensei this morning. It's already 8 in the morning, and neither of them has arrived yet," she said quietly. "Although I don't mind that Kakashi-sensei hasn't arrived yet. Sasuke-kun was always punctual at the academy. It's odd that he would arrive late for something like this." "Well, Sakura, as I expect like you did, Kakashi-sensei is most likely going to be late like he was yesterday," Naruto said, letting out a sigh, a habit he apparently developed since arriving in Konoha. "As for Sasuke, just look at the branches of that tree," he said, pointing to the tree where Sasuke was sleeping. Sakura smiled slightly as she turned to face the tree where Sasuke was dozing off. The Uchiha appeared so serene to her when he was sleeping. Sakura looked at Sasuke's sleeping form for a few more seconds before turning to Naruto and saying, "I'm sorry about yesterday, Naruto-sama, but I still think you went a little too far with what you did to me." Sakura became a little irate when Naruto began to ignore her. "I had to go to the hospital because of what you did to me," she growled, "and you just sit there like whatever." Naruto replied, "There shouldn't be any issues as long as you know your place and I know mine now. While you're here, I want you to just be quiet. I'm attempting to meditate peacefully." While Sasuke sleeps, he returned to his meditation, saying, "Just don't bother everyone." Sakura, on the other hand, simply huffed and glared at Naruto, who then opened his eyes and glared back at her. Sakura's heart leapt in her chest, causing her to back away from Naruto out of fear. She then turned around and sat down against the tree Sasuke was sleeping in, staring down at the ground for a while before more memories of what had happened to her yesterday started to come back to her, and she attempted to burn a hole in Naruto's face with her eyes. With his eyes still closed, Naruto replied, "Keep your glares to yourself, Sakura." Sakura simply growled and crossed her arms as she started staring at the ground once more. Unable to comprehend what was happening to her, she was angry with Naruto for dismissing her in this manner after what he had done to her the day before, but she was also attracted to him just as much as she was to Sasuke. Sakura let out a frustrated sigh and turned to stare at Sasuke, thinking that flirting and staring at her other information, which was simpler for her to understand, would help her to stop thinking about Naruto. She liked to think so. Thus, the only sounds on Training Ground 7 were the birds and the flow of the river beneath the bridge. When Naruto emerged from his meditation an hour later, he turned to face his so-called teammates and saw that Sakura was sitting up against the tree where Sasuke used to sleep, and that Sasuke was no longer sleeping but was instead leaning against a post with his hands in his pockets. He realized that he had never really paid much attention to the clothes that Sakura and Sasuke were wearing, but then again, he usually didn't pay much attention to other children. Sakura was wearing a red dress with black spandex shorts, while Sasuke was wearing white shorts and some sort of blue shirt. Sakura was walking strangely and holding her ribs all the time, and Naruto noticed that she had bandages in a few places. Naruto closed his eyes and returned to his meditation after thinking, "So, Sakura is still injured by what I did to her. Why isn't she still staying in the hospital? I guess she must really want to pass Kakashi's survival test as soon as possible and not risk any chance of Sasuke failing." Kakashi appeared on the training ground in a cloud of smoke an additional hour later. "Hey," Kakashi said. Sakura and Sasuke gave Kakashi their best glares, but Naruto simply opened his eyes slowly and gazed at him serenely. Sakura desperately wanted to scream at Kakashi, but she kept her mouth shut because she knew that would annoy Naruto. After examining the would-be genin, Kakashi saw that Sakura appeared hurt and had bandages on. "What happened to you, Sakura? Are you okay?" asked Kakashi, who looked at her anxiously. "I'm fine, Kakashi-sensei," Sakura replied. "Sasuke-kun and I were sparring yesterday and we got a little too rough." Sakura averted her gaze and rubbed her shoulder. "Well, you still look pretty injured," Kakashi said, nodding his head. "Do you really want to take the test today? You may have a lower chance of passing the test because of your injury." "I'm sure, Kakashi-sensei, don't worry about me, I'll be fine," Sakura said, giving Kakashi a determined look. "I will not keep Naruto-sama or Sasuke-kun hidden. I'm able to make it." Kakashi thought, "Naruto-sama?" before simply shaking his head and choosing to inquire about that later with his female student. "All right, then, but you two should exercise greater caution the next time you and Sasuke spar. Sasuke, especially you, a simple spar and a fight to the death are two different things." Kakashi looked at Sakura and Sasuke and said, "Just try not to overdo it and go too far next time." Sakura and Sasuke both said, "Yes, Kakashi-sensei," simultaneously. "All right, before I explain your genin exam, I need to talk to Naruto for just a little bit," Kakashi said, nodding his head. Then Kakashi turned to face Naruto and said, "Naruto, could you accompany me for a second?" After giving a nod, Naruto got up and accompanied Kakashi to a remote location that was out of earshot of his two teammates. "Listen, I'm sorry about the other day when I called you a demon and tried to prevent you from entering Konoha," Kakashi said softly as he turned to face Naruto. "The Kyuubi was like a father to me, and I lost my sensei to him. I had a lengthy conversation with the Hokage. Yes, the Hokage has informed me that you already know about the fox demon," he remarked. "I'm over my hatred for you now and I understand that you and the Kyuubi aren't the same being." Kakashi took a breath. "I realize now that I've hated a person who had never done anything wrong to me," he stated. "So I hope we can start on better terms and that you'll forgive me for my foolishness." The Hokage had reminded Kakashi yesterday that he wanted him to act at least neutral toward Naruto, so that Naruto would think that not everyone in the village hated him and that he had precious people in the village. That entire speech made Kakashi sick to his stomach, even though he still hated Naruto. As part of his strategy to keep Naruto faithful to the leaf, the Hokage didn't want him to know that even his own sensei detested him. Naruto, on the other hand, chose to play Kakashi's little game for the time being, even though he knew that Kakashi was lying through his teeth and could still see the nearly undetectable hatred in Kakashi's eye. "I forgive you," Naruto said, slowly nodding his head. "I comprehend." Kakashi gave you a U-shape with his gaze. "Thank you, Naruto. How about we go back to Sasuke and Sakura so I can explain the test?" he exclaimed. They both returned to where Sakura and Sasuke were waiting after Naruto nodded his head once more. Kakashi said, "Okay, we will be doing a survival test today." "A test of survival? We've done a lot of those at the academy, though, Kakashi-sensei," Sakura grumbled. "Sakura, that is accurate, but this one is going to be much harder. If you don't succeed, you'll be sent back to the academy in addition to being assigned to one of these positions and denied lunch." "Kakashi-sensei, what exactly is this survival test?" Sakura wanted to scream as loudly as she could, but she looked at Naruto and remembered that he would not be happy if she did. Instead, she asked a question in a normal voice. After making a U-shape with his eye once more, Kakashi said, "I'm glad you asked, Sakura." After removing two bells that were fastened to a string, the Junin tied them to his belt. "Your goal is to use any means necessary to obtain one of these two bells by noon. A bell will pass to whoever gets it. Anyone who doesn't receive a bell will be returned to the academy." Sakura suddenly became aware of this test and said, "But sensei, there are only two bells." "You're correct, Sakura. This implies that this test can only be passed by two individuals." From somewhere, Kakashi took out an alarm clock and placed it on one of the three posts in the clearing. "This alarm clock will go off at noon," Kakashi stated. "Now remember, come at me with the intent to kill." "But, sensei, that's risky," Sakura cried out. "Oh, and Naruto?" Kakashi inquired. "Yes," Naruto asked. "Don't use your katana in this test," he said, grinning at him. "If you do, you automatically fail. Got it? Your abilities as a ninja, not a samurai, are what I want to see when you engage in combat. You might not always have your sword with you." Kakashi thought Naruto would grumble or at the very least give him a glare. However, Naruto simply shrugged his shoulders. "Okay," said Naruto. Given that was the only response he received from Naruto, Kakashi was a little annoyed and anxious. Stupid demon, why is he acting so calm about not being able to use his sword? Kakashi thought angrily. Isn't a samurai's sword the main source of his power? He's not even complaining or questioning about it. He's either overconfident, has something up his sleeve, or just trying to act as if it doesn't bother him. Oh well, I'm sure I'll be able to humiliate him and put him in his place if he can't use a katana. Kakashi pondered over Naruto's straightforward response. Since Sasuke is on the team and I want to train him, it doesn't matter if this team succeeds or fails. In addition, the council has already ordered me to pass this team because of Sasuke, and the Hokage has ordered me to pass them because of Naruto, Kakashi reasoned. Kakashi awoke from his reverie and said, "All right, the test will start right now." All three of the possible genin immediately hid and vanished from their positions. Kakashi thought, well, it looks like everyone is hiding pretty well, even the samurai. Sakura and Sasuke both tensed up and narrowed their eyes as Kakashi slowly reached into his pouch, while Naruto simply watched. Kakashi slowly took out a book that was orange. An orange book about Icha Paradise. Sasuke shook his head and Sakura sighed in frustration. Naruto simply let out a sigh. Kakashi simply stood there reading his smut and occasionally laughing in a perverse way. After growing tired of Kakashi's antics, Sasuke saw his opportunity to surprise Kakashi by throwing a kunai and shuriken directly at Junin. At first, Sasuke believed he had hit him, but then he realized he had only struck a log. Then, far from where Kakashi was, Sasuke began leaping through trees. Damn it. He used the replacement technique. He thought that attack I launched must have told him where I was. When Sasuke eventually touched down, he began to run through the forest. Sakura, meanwhile, was trying to find Sasuke and wondering if Kakashi had him. Suddenly, someone put a hand around her mouth, grabbed her from behind, and dragged her into some bushes. A voice whispered in Sakura's ear as she struggled a little and the hand covering her mouth muffled her scream. "Sakura, calm down, it's me, Naruto." Sakura was both anxious and flushed from the intimate touch. In order to avoid touching the pink-haired creature more than necessary, Naruto swiftly let her go. After putting his right hand over Sakura's mouth during this entire ordeal, Naruto also reminded himself to wash it afterward. Perhaps taking a shower would also be beneficial. Naruto-sama, what are you doing here? I have to go find Sasuke-kun. Kakashi could have gotten him, murmured Sakura. Sakura, I figured out the point of this test, Naruto muttered. Sakura gave a few quick blinks. Well, isn't the point of the test to get the bells, Naruto-sama? Naruto gave a headshake. No, the answer is simple, he replied. It's teamwork. Sakura made the decision to pose a thoughtful query at that point. Huh? Sighing once more, Naruto pondered why he's been surrounded by fools lately. Have you ever heard of a genin team that is actually made up of two people, Sakura? Surely that piece of information was mentioned in the academy you went to also. Do you really think that normally a genin could take down a junin? The only slim possibility that something like a bell could be taken away from a junin is if 3 or more genin work together. A genin has no chance when facing a junin alone. Sakura paused to reflect, but didn't Kakashi say? He just said what he said to put us against each other, Naruto replied. He doesn't want the purpose of this test to be obvious. Oh, I get it now. Sakura blushed with shame. She had a valid reason for doing so. She attended the academy for years and has lived in Konoha her entire life, and this new kid, who had only lived in Konoha for a few years and had never even attended the academy, was the one who used information she thought she should have remembered to figure out the test's true purpose. Good, now let's go find Sasuke so we can all work together, said Naruto. Sakura nodded, and the two of them set out to find Sasuke. They soon discovered the Uchiha. His head was the only part of him that protruded from the earth. When Sakura saw him, she was about to scream, but Naruto again put his hand over her mouth to keep her from revealing their location. After all, she was able to scream quite loudly. Relax, he's just buried into the ground by some jutsu Kakashi used, Naruto replied. We'll just dig him out. Before they both emerged from the bushes and made their way to Sasuke, Sakura gave a nod. When Sasuke saw them, all he could do was glare. No word. Sakura dug him out while Naruto simply shrugged. Listen, Sasuke. The purpose of this exercise isn't really to get the bells, it's teamwork, so we're going to have to work together to get the bells from Kakashi. Sasuke sneered. I could get them on my own if I wanted to. How do you know the purpose is teamwork anyway? I already explained about that to Sakura. She can tell you. I don't feel like repeating myself. Following Sasuke's excavation, Sakura informed him that Naruto was aware of the bell test's actual purpose and stressed the significance of the 3 of them cooperating. Sasuke smirked as he turned to face Naruto. So is the purpose of this test the only reason you're not fighting Kakashi-sensei by yourself? Asked he. Or is it because you're not as near as powerful without your sword, samurai? Naruto lit a cigarette and began to smoke it. I don't want to show what all I can do without a sword. If I don't have to, it's better if I always have the element of surprise, he remarked. Sakura remarked. Yeah, but this is Konoha, we're all allies here. You shouldn't be scared to show your full abilities to your sensei or teammates. Sasuke turned to glare at Sakura. Don't be a fool, Sakura. There's always a chance that your allies could become your enemies in the future. There are probably also people here that are spies from other villages you just never know. At that moment, Sasuke's thoughts turned to his brother. Enough, we've wasted too much time already with discussing philosophy. We need to come up with a plan to get the bells from Kakashi, and I have just the right idea, replied Naruto. The blonde samurai wanted to know how well he could use Sakura and Sasuke in combat. Naruto wasn't genuinely devising a strategy merely to pass Kakashi's test. Even if they failed, he was convinced that the Junin would still pass them. Sasuke merely grinned, but Sakura giggled at Naruto's nickname for Kakashi. After that, the 3 of them got together and started formulating a strategy. After 4 minutes, I don't know, I'm scared. What if I get real hurt or even killed? Replied Sakura. Calm down, Sakura. I have complete faith in Kakashi doing what I know he'll do, said Naruto. You'll barely get a scratch on you. Naruto, this is still pretty dangerous for her if she gets hurt. I'm not going to take the blame this time, said Sasuke. Sasuke, she's not going to get hurt, Naruto said. She may get a few scratches on her when Kakashi shoves her out of the way, but that's about it, and even if she does get hurt severely, I'll take the full blame for it. I won't even say that you two had any part in this plan. I'll just say that my aim was off because I've never used kunai and shuriken very much, he stated. Sasuke gave Naruto a scowl. So, swear to me and to us both that you will bear full responsibility if she is seriously injured. Naruto just finished smoking his cigarette. I swear, however, I believe that both of you are exaggerating. Sakura will be alright now. Sasuke, are you interested in passing this test? How much do you want to get your retribution by becoming a ninja? With a sigh, Sasuke turned to face the ground and said, I want it alright, let's get this done. I'm not sure if I can pull this off. Sasuke-kun, I'm afraid. Sasuke-kun. Sasuke turned to face Sakura, his gaze growing intense as he said, Sakura, do you love me? Sakura's eyes glowed immediately. Sasuke-kun, of course. If you love me, then you'll do this for me, Sakura, Sasuke said, his eyes hardening only this one item. Sakura's expression changed from nervous to determined. Oh okay Sasuke-kun, I'll do it, she said. I'll prove my love for you. Although it would be difficult for him to say, Sasuke nodded his head, but he couldn't help but feel sorry for her because he could see that she was still a little nervous and wanted to make sure she didn't change her mind at the last minute. Sakura, after this test as a Vera we'll go on a date, okay? With hearts in her eyes, Sakura squealed at once. Yes, Sasuke-kun. I promise not to let you down, I swear. Naruto thought, I think I'm going to be sick watching this little romance play out. Enough of this test's allotted time is almost up, now is the time to implement our plan. Let's get out, Naruto said. All three of them vanished right away and went in pursuit of Kakashi. Speaking of Kakashi, he was reading his small orange book in a different clearing. As Kakashi closed his book and put it in his pouch, he thought, their time is almost up, I think I'll go put Naruto in his place while I still have the time. That demon brat will be helpless without being able to use that sword of his. However, Sakura emerged from the forest and glared at him before he could go look for Naruto. I'll exact revenge on Sasuke-kun. Just taijutsu between you and me. This very spot. At this moment, Sakura shouted. Well, I guess I'll give you a quick lesson on taijutsu before going after Naruto, Kakashi said with a laugh. Sakura, come show me what you're capable of. As quickly as she could, Sakura charged at Kakashi, threw a right punch that he easily blocked, then another punch that he dodged as easily as drinking water, then a few kicks that he blocked, before jumping to his right side and removing a kunai, only to drop it after accidentally cutting her arm with it. Kakashi said, you should be more careful with those, Sakura. When a hail of kunai and shurikens suddenly emerged from some bushes, they were moving faster than most of them do when thrown, but they weren't going in the direction of Kakashi. Instead, they were going in the direction of Sakura. Sakura. Be careful. The Junin knew she wasn't a Bunshin because if she were, he wouldn't have been able to feel her punches and kicks, and she couldn't even be a Kage Bunshin because he saw her bleed a while ago when she cut her arm. Kakashi yelled, but he could see that she wasn't going to be able to dodge or block them in time. She was just standing there looking at them coming towards her and acting as if she was frozen in fear. Sakura was about to be hit by the kunai and shuriken, but Kakashi shoved her aside and took her place because he knew that she might be killed. He immediately raised his arms in front of him to prevent some of the kunai and shuriken from slicing into his neck, head, eyes, and other important places. By the time he thought it was all over, Kakashi was breathing heavily and was bleeding all over. He put his arms down slowly, but suddenly he had a bad feeling. Some of the shuriken and kunai sliced into his arms, while others pierced his shoulders, legs, and even chest. When Kakashi looked down, he saw that the kunai Sakura had dropped some time ago had an exploding tag on it. He quickly attempted to jump out of the way, but the explosion caught him because he was still too close to it, and he was flung into a tree, where ninja wires wrapped around him and bound him. When Naruto materialized out of nowhere and swiftly snatched the bells from Kakashi's belt before emerging next to Sasuke, Sakura emerged from her hiding spot and approached Naruto and Sasuke. Sasuke had appeared in front of Kakashi with the ends of the wires. He gave the bells to Sakura and Sasuke and said, "Here, take them." At that moment, the timer went off and began to ring. Smirking, Sasuke said, "Just in time." As he attempted to regain his bearings, Kakashi was silent for a minute. However, once he regained consciousness, he was not pleased. Kakashi narrowed one eye and growled, "Let me go at them." When Naruto swiftly sliced through the wires securing Kakashi before sheathing his katana, the latter fell to the ground and simply stood there, glaring at Sakura and Sasuke in bewilderment. "Don't be such a sore loser, Kakashi-sensei," said Sasuke, quickly growing irritated. "We collaborated after realizing that the test's goal was teamwork. We even have your foolish bells. Everything was fair and square." Kakashi's fists clenched. "You say it's fair? Was it just for you and Naruto to put Sakura in the same kind of danger that she was previously in? I am aware that Sakura's near accident was not an accident. In order to obtain the bells from me out of selfishness, you two set her up and used her as a sacrifice. Kakashi-sensei, however, I approved of the strategy that Sasuke-kun and Naruto-sama devised. I did it willingly, Kakashi-sensei. I knew what I was getting myself into. As you can see, neither Naruto-sama nor Sasuke-kun deceived me in any way. Nothing went wrong, Sensei, Sakura cried out. Sakura was the target of Kakashi's ferocious glare. No, Sakura. What they did was incorrect, absolutely incorrect. You ought not to have consented to their plotting at all. You might have died or suffered severe injuries. Then Kakashi turned to face the three of them and said, "What's wrong with you kids? Who among you thought it would be a good idea to put Sakura in such danger?" Naruto took a step forward and said, "Me? I should have known," Kakashi said, squinting his eyes even more as he glared at Naruto. "I'm not sure how you people in Japan treat your teammates, but we don't sacrifice our teammates here. Naruto, the mission is not prioritized. Your group does," Kakashi remarked. "But we didn't sacrifice Sakura," Naruto said, cocking his head slightly. "She barely has a scratch on her as she stands here alive. I knew you would save her, and you did. So I had no intention of using her as a sacrifice." "What if, Naruto, I hadn't arrived in time? What if I had mistaken her for a Bunshin? I just about made it in time to save Sakura. What if she had been killed or gravely injured?" Kakashi cried out. "What could have happened is not the point," Naruto said, taking a puff from his cigarette before responding. "The important thing is that neither Sasuke nor I intended for Sakura to suffer harm or die. Why, in your opinion, did she teach you taijutsu? Why, in your opinion, did she pretend to have cut herself with a kunai by accident? You would risk your life to save her because you wouldn't believe she was just a Bunshin or a cage Bunshin. Sakura accepted my suggestion as well as the remainder of our strategy. She was aware of what she was getting herself into, as she had stated some time ago. Do you get that? She consented to take a chance." Naruto stomped on his cigarette after tossing it to the ground. Sakura willingly chose to jeopardize her safety for the team for the sake of their teammates. Some team members must occasionally take chances. Back in Japan, I've taken many risks for my fellow soldiers, and I've witnessed many others follow suit. Sakura was not coerced into taking any chances in the past. Nobody made me take any chances. Furthermore, I have never witnessed anyone else being coerced into taking risks. Nobody on this team was utilized as a purported sacrifice. "You three have passed my test," Kakashi said, glancing at Naruto before deciding to ask him later how he learned about the cage Bunshin. "You collaborated well, and Asai, I even gave you the bells. I do not, however, entirely agree with the strategy you three devised to obtain the bells for something as basic as this. None of you had to put the team at such risk. If it were a real life or death situation, I might be able to comprehend, but this was merely a bell test. Additionally, I believe that you tricked Sakura into doing what she did, Naruto." "I was not tricked into doing anything," Sakura snarled. It's obvious that Sakura didn't want to believe that Sasuke-kun would ever trick her or that she was stupid enough to fall for it. Naruto simply shrugged and kept smoking his cigarette, saying, "Think what you will, Kakashi." However, the fact that Sakura's mother was on the council was one of the primary causes of Kakashi's ire. He wouldn't have been as upset if it had been any other student. "Just keep in mind, Naruto, that this isn't a samurai world. This is the ninja's world, and those who disobey the rules are referred to as scum in the ninja community. But worse than scum are those who don't look out for their teammates. I want everyone to keep that in mind," Kakashi remarked. "We'll meet here tomorrow at the same time and start doing missions," Kakashi said after a lengthy silence. "Officially, we are now Team 7. There on that stone are your lunches. Pardon me now, but I have to go to the hospital to get these wounds treated." Kakashi then vanished in a cloud of smoke. After a minute of staring at one another, the newly formed Team 7 moved slowly to Naruto's lunch, sat down on the ground, and started eating. Sakura exclaimed, "We made it past Sasuke-kun." She gave the Uchiha her tightest embrace. After removing Sakura from him, Sasuke moved to where the other two lunches were seated. "Let's just eat," Sasuke said. "All right, Sasuke-kun," Sakura remarked as she strolled alongside Sasuke to grab lunch. Despite his outward display of happiness, Sasuke was quite happy that he had been able to pass Kakashi's test and even persuaded himself that he was the primary reason his team had passed. Sakura chose to pose a question that had been on her mind after they had finished their meal. "Naruto-sama?" "Yes?" Naruto asked. "You didn't really trick me into tricking Kakashi, did you? I know this may sound harsh," Sakura inquired. Naruto lied and shook his head, saying, "No, I didn't lie to you. You agreed when Sasuke and I offered you the chance to complete your portion of the plan, Sakura. It's as easy as that." Glancing down, Sakura said, "Oh, okay." Naruto stood up and said, "I'm heading home. I'll see you two tomorrow," he remarked, later. Naruto began to leave but abruptly stopped, saying, "Oha, I almost forgot." Sakura and Sasuke gave him a questioning glance. "Sasuke, don't forget the date you said you'd go on with Sakura." Naruto turned to face them before turning to leave. "That bastard." Sasuke thought Sakura gave Sasuke another hug while squealing with delight. Oh, I almost forgot. So, Sasuke-kun, when is our date? Sasuke merely sighed after leaving Sakura and Sasuke at Training Ground 7. Naruto strolled through the streets of Konoha, ignoring all the glares and whispers that he was a demon and monster. Some had even called him those names out loud, but he was growing weary of it. He could understand if some of these people hated him because he had killed Leaf ninjas back when he was fighting in Japan, but the main reason everyone hated him was something he couldn't help. Well, whatever. In Japan, Naruto was at least regarded as a human being, if not a hero, and he didn't need the respect of a group of haughty fools in Konoha. However, he was simply viewed as lower than dirt, as though he should be subservient to them and serve as their scapegoat. The Hokage's orders be damned, Naruto would die before he allowed himself to become that way. You fucking bitch. Naruto snapped out of his reverie and glanced ahead to see a drunk shouting at a woman wearing a brown trench coat and having purple hair shaped like a peacock. I want no trouble at all. The woman uttered those words. She quickly avoided the empty bottle that the inebriated threw at her. Why don't you just die, snake whore? Asshole, leave me alone. The crowd quickly joined the inebriated and started hurling rocks, bottles, and rotten fruit at the woman while yelling obscenities at her. You are a betrayer. You ought to have perished with that jerk of a sensei. You'll always be nothing in this village. You are merely a part of that wicked betrayer. Why don't you just end your own life? In any case, you will always be a piece of shit to us. The woman attempted to flee, but the crowd simply followed, so she began to run, the newly transformed mob at her heels, turning a corner and into a back alley, only to hit herself in the head with a rock, stumbling back into a wall while clutching her forehead where the rock had struck her, and looking ahead, she saw the entire mob in front of her. There's no escape, you stupid snake whore, a chunin said, glaring at the woman as he moved forward in front of the crowd. If you fight back, the council will simply punish you, so, while I fuck you senselessly, just be a good little slut and take your beating. While many of the men in the crowd laughed, the chunin smiled lecherously, and the women in the crowd smiled evilly. The woman in the corner was appalled. The woman was shocked to see that the chunin wasn't the only ninja in the crowd. There were also other chunin and some genin in their 20s and early 30s in the mob. The mob began to slowly move down the alley towards her, and all she could do was grit her teeth and hope that Embu would come to save her if she fought back. Konoha's council might even have her put to death. In addition, there were personal reasons why she didn't fight back. The Hokage repeatedly told her that his hands were nearly completely tied down by the council, but occasionally she felt he wasn't being completely honest. When the fire approached her, she had to close her eyes, cross her arms in front of her head, and push herself into the wall to get as far away from the flames as possible. Suddenly, she felt a tremendous wave of heat, and before she knew what was happening, she saw the mob in front of her consumed by a large wall of fire, their cries of agony lasting only a moment before they were all reduced to ashes. Then, as if it had never been there, the flames vanished, and the woman slowly put her arms down and opened her eyes to see smoke, but not enough to block her view of a young boy standing at the back alley entrance, his katana pointing toward the area where the mob had been. He slowly lowered his sword, then put it back in its sheath, and began to walk in her direction. She didn't recognize him at first, but as he passed through the smoke, she recognized him, and only then did she see his face. Everyone in Konoha knew who he was. The Demon Brat, or his more well-known title. The apprentice of the Batusei. UK killed them, didn't you? The woman stammered. Naruto merely gazed at her before giving a slow nod. Yes, I did, Anko-san. Naruto informed him. When Naruto saw this woman being harassed by that drunk a while back, he recognized her right away. He had previously mentioned that he had read at a library, but he never really specified which library he had visited. The truth is that Sarutobi had allowed Naruto to read books in the Hokage's library, since it would obviously cause a big commotion if he had tried to go the village's public library. Of course, the old man didn't let him near any of the books in the library that pertained to jutsus or any techniques. Sarutobi had only allowed him to look at books that pertained to the history of the leaf as well as Konoha's culture. And there were always guards there in the library with him who made sure he didn't look at any other type of book. In one of the history books he studied, he had read the history about Orochimaru and even the apprentice he used to have. The reason he was able to recognize Anko was because there was even some pictures of her in some of the pages regarding information pertaining to Orochimaru in the history book he read. These pictures not only showed what she looked as a child, but also what she looked as an adult in the current timeline. He knew that there was a possibility the woman would be hated in the village like he was given her history with Orochimaru. Although Naruto wasn't entirely sure why Sarutobi had led him into the Hokage library, he had a sneaking suspicion that it was to win over more of his confidence. Although he wasn't sure if the Hokage wanted him to discover such information, Naruto also had a suspicion that some of the material in those history books wasn't even taught at the Ninja Academy. Anko was taken aback that the child knew her name, but she felt she needed to concentrate more on the here and now, so she chose to inquire about it later. "You didn't have to travel so far," Anko shouted. After giving her a long look, Naruto said, "They were going to harm you. I understand, but you didn't have to murder them. I would have been saved sooner or later by Anbu." With a perplexed expression, Naruto tilted his head and asked Anko, "Why shouldn't I kill them if they mean harm? I don't get it." "Well, many of the members of that mob were inebriated and had no idea what they were doing. Furthermore, they had no intention of killing me, they were simply going to assault me. Some of the men in that mob were going to do worse than beat you." Anko winced. "Well, sometimes people in this village treat people like me unfairly, I really can't do anything about it." Naruto was still perplexed by the peculiar woman's actions. "I don't understand this, people who try to mistreat me quit when I confront them, why do you act in a different way than I do?" After pausing to look at the ground, Anko responded, "Because I want to redeem myself." Even though Naruto knew why she wanted to redeem herself, he chose to inquire just in case. "Why?" Naruto asked. "I was once Orochimaru's apprentice," Anko said, looking up at him for a minute before responding. "Do you know who that is?" "Yes," Naruto said, nodding his head slowly, "but I don't hate you or look down on you because of that. Many people here don't know the difference between me and Orochimaru," Anko said with a sorrowful smile. "Therefore, I have a lot to prove to be accepted." Naruto sighed and nodded once more. "Are you going to tell anyone about what I did?" "It won't matter if I do or not," Anko said, averting her gaze in some way. "The Hokage is aware of everything that occurs in this village. I'm sure he will be aware of what you just did, and I'm afraid that you may be in big trouble. That's one of the reasons I don't fight Baka." "I understand how the Hokage is aware of everything in this village," Naruto said, shaking his head, "and I have a way to keep him from seeing some of the things I do." Now it was Anko's turn to look confused. "What? Really? How can you prevent him from finding out?" "Wait a minute, what kind of things are you doing that you wouldn't want the Hokage to know about?" Anko asked with a suspicious expression on her face. "Regretfully, I am unable to respond to your initial query. Regarding your second query, I simply defend myself from people who attack me with a great deal of prejudice." "So, this isn't the first time you killed civilians and ninja here?" Anko asked, her eyes widening. "I think I already made it clear to you before that I stand up for myself," Naruto replied. Anko glared at Naruto and said, "I ought to report you. I should just turn you in for not only what you did here, but what you did before," she screamed. With composure, Naruto replied, "But you won't." Anko kept glaring at Naruto before sighing and slowly turning to face the ground. She muttered, "No, of course I won't. You saved me, when no one else would. You came to my aid, one of the few people who isn't troubled by my past as you." Curious, Naruto asked, "And are you troubled by my former Anko-san? Are you troubled by what's inside of me?" he inquired. "No Gaki, I'm not," Anko said, staring into Naruto's eyes. "I understand what it's like to be despised for something beyond your control in the past. You were merely defending your position, you were defending your nation. None of our ninja were killed by you out of retaliation. You did it because we happened to be on the opposing side of the war you were in." Although he was still wary of Anko, he could see that she was telling the truth when he looked into her eyes, and he was surprised to discover that she was the first person in the entire village who didn't hate him after learning what was inside of him. He had suspected that she wouldn't be like the other people in the village who hated him because her situation was similar to his own, which is why he saved her, but he had serious doubts that she would be any different from everyone else in the leaf either. Of course, he would have killed her if she did hate him. He couldn't risk her ratting him out, but it seems he wouldn't have to worry about that any longer. "Thank you for understanding and not turning me in," Naruto said, turning around. "I've got to go now. If you don't mind, Anko-san, maybe we'll cross paths again." He then left the back alley, turned the corner, and vanished. After staring at the spot where Naruto used to stand for a short while, Anko snapped out of her reverie and said, "Hey Gaki, hold on. You never explained to me how you found out my name." Anko sprinted out of the back alley and turned the corner that Naruto had taken, but he vanished like a ghost and she didn't see him. "Hoo-ha, weird," Anko said, grinning and gazing up at the sky. Anko remarked, "You're a pretty interesting kid, Gaki. We'll meet again sooner than you think." "This is Sasuke, arrived at point B. This is Sakura, arrived at point C." Naruto reached point A with a sigh. Abruptly, a shadowy figure resembling an animal leapt into a clearing. Behind this enigmatic target, behind some trees, appeared Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura, while Kakashi himself was concealed in some bushes. There it is. Sakura revealed. Naruto just disappeared, while Sasuke and Sakura fled to a group of trees that were closer to their target. How far is it from the target? Kakashi inquired. After a moment, Sasuke responded, about 5 meters. Sakura declared, I'm ready for this. Me too. Sasuke remarked before scanning his surroundings. Wait a minute, where is? I'm in front of the target. Behind a tree. He'll probably run toward me and I'll take care of him if you two can't capture him, Naruto remarked. Naruto, try to stick more to the plan next time, Kakashi said, feeling a little arrogant about reprimanding Naruto. The one-eyed Junin was simply ignored by Naruto. Alright, Team 7, go! Kakashi cried out. Sakura and Sasuke jumped out of their hiding places and headed straight for their target. Sakura was able to reach it first and she latched onto what they were after, which turned out to be a cat. A very mean one at that. Sasuke was about to inform Kakashi via his radio headpiece that their mission had been successful when he suddenly noticed it. She attempted to hold onto him, but it scratched her face, her clothes, and even her head when she fell to the ground. Sakura was lying on the ground, occasionally twitching, and the cat was standing on her enormous forehead, hissing at him. After a minute of clawing, biting, and swearing, Naruto entered the clearing. Oh, Sasuke thought. But the cat abruptly grabbed his face and began clawing the living daylights out of him. Sasuke did everything he could to get the damn thing off him, but the animal seemed to feel that he deserved to be punished. The cat leapt off Sasuke and landed in front of the blonde samurai as soon as Naruto appeared. This time, however, the cat did not hiss or attack. Instead, it simply stared into Naruto's eyes for a while. Then, slowly, Naruto got down on one knee and extended his arms, and the cat continued to stare at him for a few seconds before approaching Naruto and accepting being picked up into the samurai's arms. Naruto then rocked the cat back and forth. Mission is a success, Naruto said into his radio communicator. Sakura and Sasuke gave him a nasty look, with scratches all over their faces, clothing, and hair. When the cat in Naruto's arms began to purr happily, they turned their scowls to the cat. Stupid evil cat, Sakura muttered. Does its right ear have a ribbon? Is that Tora? Kakashi's voice could be heard over the phone. Naruto affirmed, yes it does, adding, this is our target. All right, Kakashi declared. Operation Capture Tora the Lost Pet was finished. Just turn over that little monster, Naruto, Sasuke said, drawing a kunai. It must perish. Sakura nodded vigorously. You're correct, Naruto-sama. It's wicked. Eventually, it will kill us all. Take a look at what it did to my gorgeous face and hair. Sakura began to sob uncontrollably. The cat then stuck its tongue out at him, and Sasuke gave it a fierce glare. Naruto, this has been going on for far too long, he said. This must end here. I'm not sure how you managed to always catch it and calm it down. We've been dealing with that demon for a while. I will permanently put an end to its reign of terror. You know that this is just a cat, right? Naruto asked, raising an eyebrow. It's a wicked little creature that only shows you kindness because it intends to eat your soul, Sakura cried out. With a frown, Sasuke said, I wouldn't be surprised. Sakura was ecstatic that her crush agreed with her, and she had hearts in her eyes. Oh Sasuke-kun. Naruto shook his head, thinking, look, it's not a demon, a monster, and it definitely doesn't devour souls. Are all people from Konoha this stupid? It's a cat. A fucking feline, and in order to catch it, we really didn't have to pretend that we were going to kill someone. This is merely a mockery. Simply take your time approaching the cat and maintain eye contact with it. You must assure it that you will not hurt it. When you first see it, you should be gentle and not just chase after it, sneered Sasuke. Additionally, it might require some practice, but you will eventually master it. That's how easy it is. Sasuke gripped his kunai tightly and walked slowly towards Naruto, glaring at the cat in the blonde's arms, saying, whatever, there isn't going to be any more practice, because it's going to die today. He was only able to take a few steps before he felt a hand clamp down on his shoulder. That's enough, Sasuke, Kakashi said, clutching Sasuke's shoulders as he gazed down at the young samurai. Naruto, I believe that Tora simply likes you for some reason, he said. I have no idea why. People have undoubtedly attempted, but failed, to capture Tora in the manner you described. Perhaps you simply have a gift for animals. Though he shrugged, Naruto had a suspicion that Kakashi was referring to the Kyuubi. Let's just go see what other missions are available to us. Sakura and Sasuke then followed Naruto to the Hokage Tower. Since he was the sensei and should be the one giving orders here, Kakashi stood where he was for a minute, feeling a little irritated that Naruto was taking charge of the group when he was only meant to be a weapon. He also felt that Sasuke should be in charge when he wasn't present, so he decided to handle that minor issue later. Office of the Hokage's missions. As he sat behind his desk and looked out over Konoha through his window, Sarutobi Hiruzen, the Sandaime Hokage, couldn't help but think about Naruto. He thought about when his S-class secret about the boy being the Batusei's apprentice had come to light, and he suddenly cursed himself when he realized that he didn't hold that S-class secret as a top priority as he should have. He knew that Naruto could defend himself very well in the event that his enemies or challengers would kill anyone in their way, and if Team 7 ever took a stand. Second, he had intended to reveal Naruto as the Batusei's apprentice later on, but he had wanted that to happen when another village was attacking Konohagakure. He believed that this would be the ideal moment to surprise the Leaf's enemies by revealing that the Batusei's apprentice was now under the Leaf's control. How surprised those same enemies would have been. This is the second reason Sarutobi didn't consider that S-class secret as a top priority earlier. Sarutobi could only imagine how it would have been safer for the Leaf if Naruto's past identity had been kept secret. He would also have to figure out a way to prevent another shinobi village from trying to recruit Naruto. He had no way of knowing what Iwa was planning, and relations between the Leaf and Suna were already very strained. And if only he had thought about that S-class secret having more priority, he would never have been so careless with trusting it with so many people, including those Chunin guards and that Anbu squad that was with him the day Naruto arrived at the Leaf. Suddenly, he was startled out of his reverie by a knock at his door. "Enter now," Sarutobi shouted after opening the door and peering inside. Sarutobi's secretary said, "Hokage-sama, Team 7 is here to see you." Sarutobi dismissed his secretary with a wave, saying, "Yes, let them in." When the secretary stepped aside to let Team 7 into the office, she couldn't help but glare at one of the genin in the group before shutting the door. Can you guess who she was glaring at? "Hi Hokage-sama," she said. "Team 7 has just completed our last mission and awaits another," stated Kakashi. "My darling," cried a plump woman who had been sitting in the corner of the room. She was the fire daimyo's wife, Lady Shijimi. She ran over to Naruto, grabbed the cat out of his arms, and starting squeezing the life out of the poor thing. Sakura had a sadistic smile on her face while watching the display. Sasuke merely grinned. "I would try to show the woman how to properly hold it so it wouldn't run off again, but it's funny to watch the Haruno and Uchiha get all scratched up and frustrated. As for me, it's not real hard to catch it," Naruto thought. "Poor kitty, it's no wonder it ran away. My adorable little Tora-chan. I was really anxious." As she kept strangling her poor cat, the wife of Fire Daimyo cried out. "Okay Team 7, your next duty is babysitting an elder's grandson, shopping in the neighboring village, help some villagers carry some bags of manure," Sarutobi said after picking up a piece of paper. At that moment, a loud, "Mio www," and an exclamation, "No, my little Tora-chan, return." With a sigh, the Hokage said, "Or you could go catch Tora again." While Sasuke glared at the Hokage, Naruto shrugged, but Sakura's reaction appeared to be more forceful. "That's it. I'm tired of this, old man. I'm done chasing that foolish cat around the village. These other missions don't appeal to me either. Give us something different, something superior, something that doesn't squander the abilities of my Sasuke-kun," Sakura yelled as she angrily tugged at her already disheveled hair. Iruka, who had been assisting the Hokage with mission requests while seated next to him, got up from his chair and said, "Sakura, stop talking. You have no right to speak to Hokage-sama in such a manner. Before beginning more complex tasks, every novice genin begins with simpler ones." Sakura scowled at Iruka, who still remembered how he had made her feel uncomfortable at the academy, and now he was making her feel uncomfortable again. Well, she would show him, but before she could say anything she might later regret, the Hokage interrupted, saying, "It seems I will have to explain what these duties entail." The Hokage then proceeded to explain the various mission rankings and how they are handled, as well as the ranks of ninja in the village. Finally, he began to notice something about Team 7. "So, Naruto-sama, do you think that painting my fingernails red will make Sasuke-kun like me more? Do you like Naruto-sama as well?" In the meantime, Kakashi was whispering to Sasuke about the private training he would provide him later, while Sakura showed him her red fingernails. Naruto, meanwhile, was merely examining his katana while ignoring Sakura's foolishness. As he observed all of this, the Hokage had a tick mark on his forehead. "Hey, pay attention to me." "Oh, sorry about that Hokage-sama," said Kakashi, rubbing the back of his head as the entire Team 7 halted their activities and turned to face the elderly Hokage. All Sarutobi did was sigh. "Sama Hokage?" Sasuke inquired. "Yes, Sasuke?" The Hokage asked. Sakura applauded before Sasuke went on. "Hokage-sama, as much as I loathe to admit it, I agree with Sakura here," Sakura said. "Our skills as a team and as individuals are being wasted with such trivial duties. Our team has completed more than enough D-rank missions, in my opinion, to be awarded a higher one as new genins. I think it's critical that we get experience early in our careers, therefore, I insist that we be assigned a mission with a higher ranking, Sasuke remarked. These D-rank ones are beneath me. If Team 7 were to go on a mission outside of the village, they could be put in danger because the demon is the Batusei's apprentice, but it is important that the last Uchiha gains experience as soon as possible. Kakashi will be there with them and he is the strongest Junin in the village, and if Sasuke thinks he and the rest of Team 7 are ready, well then I should probably give him what he wants. You've been incredibly silent, Naruto. Do you not think we ought to embark on a more important mission? Sasuke asked, wanting Naruto to genuinely support him because he instinctively perceived the blonde as the team's leader. Sasuke, however, would never acknowledge it. The blonde samurai was smoking his cigarette quietly when everyone turned to look at him. After a cloud of smoke cleared his lips, he said, actually, I like these D-rank missions. Everyone gasped. The D-rank missions were unheard of. No one had ever liked them. These missions are peaceful to me. Naruto went on. They prevent my thoughts from wandering to things from the past that I would prefer not to think about compared to the missions I completed prior to moving to Konoha. These missions are a welcome change for me. Unlike the higher ranked missions, they don't remind me of the Bakumatsu no Doran that I fought in. Before the Hokage cleared his throat, there was a prolonged period of silence during which everyone gazed at Naruto in disbelief and some in perplexity. Kakashi, do you think your team is ready for a higher mission? Yes, Hokage-sama, the one-eyed pervert replied immediately, I think they are. I'm afraid you've been outvoted, Naruto-kun, the Hokage said, nodding his head before turning to face Naruto. You ought to have anticipated receiving a mission with a higher ranking. Eventually it was just a question of time. I suppose so, Hokage-sama, Naruto uttered. I'll give you all a C-rank mission, Sarutobi said, glancing at Team 7 after pausing to smoke his pipe. Sarutobi turned to face his office door and said, you can come in here now. This mission concerns the protection of someone. Sarutobi's office door opened to reveal an elderly man with a gray beard, a bottle of sake in his left hand, and a gray beard who essentially looked like a drunken jerk. He took a long gulp of his booze before lowering his eyes to Team 7. What's this? A samurai and two brats. The person with the large forehead and pink hair seems more suited for a freak show at the circus. Sakura lunged at him, growling, why you? However, Kakashi restrained her. Sakura, we are meant to keep the client safe, not murder him. There is a distinction, Kakashi stated. Before continuing, the client took another long gulp of his booze. My name is Tazuna, and I am the most skilled bridge builder until I return to Nami no Kuni and finish the bridge. I expect you to defend me with your lives. After giving a nod, Kakashi turned to face Team 7 and said, you all need to pack whatever you need for this trip and meet me and Tazuna at the North Gate in 1 hour. After 3 hours. Where on earth are they? Sakura, Sasuke, and Tazuna had been waiting at Konoha's North Gate for a long time, but there was still no sign of Naruto or Kakashi. After a few minutes of waiting, they were able to see two figures approaching from the distance. As they got closer, they noticed that one of them was wearing a cloak and a Sugagasa hat, while the other was a woman wearing a brown trench coat, a short skirt, and purple hair shaped like a peacock. When these two individuals finally arrived at Team 7 and Tazuna, the woman spoke. This is them, isn't it, Gaki? Enko remarked, they don't look like much. Sakura had a tick mark on her enormous forehead, and Sasuke glared at the woman. Stop talking. This is an elite Uchiha, Sasuke. And the Batusei himself trained my other teammate, who is a powerhouse. You would know our team is the best genin team in Konoha if he were here, I'll wager. Enko laughed. Is that so? And what exactly is it that you contribute, wench? You must be the weak insect on the team, or is it you're just too modest to say anything about your skills? What could it be? I am beautiful. Sakura cried in desperation. Enko turned to the person next to her and began to laugh. Well, Gaki, at least they're pathetic enough to give you amusement. While Sasuke merely attempted to burn a hole in Enko's head with his eyes, Sakura sputtered in fury. The other person said, behave, Enko-san, and slowly removed his Sugagasa hat to reveal Naruto. Enko sulked. You never let me have any fun. Naruto-sama. Sakura exclaimed. Naruto turned in Sakura's direction. I'm touched that you have enough loyalty to actually speak so highly of me, Sakura. Sakura flushed and became anxious. Thank you, Naruto-sama. Enko chuckled. Naruto-sama. Whoa, when did this happen? Are you somehow related to royalty, Gaki? Naruto said, it's a long story, and his tone signaled the end of the discussion. Naruto was extremely irritated by Enko's attempts to ruffle his hair because he disliked being touched. Oh come on, Gaki. I have all day, you can tell me anything. With a sigh, Naruto recalled his second encounter with Anko. A flashback: Naruto was returning to his apartment on foot. He had just finished assisting his team in painting a fence as their final D-rank task of the day, though his obnoxious teammates certainly did. He didn't mind at all for the most part. They merely whined and believed that they were too important to perform such tasks, and Kakashi, his so-called sensei, did nothing but watch them work. Kakashi would only concentrate on Sasuke during Naruto and his alleged team's training sessions, leaving Sakura and Naruto to their own devices, but Naruto was already aware that would occur. Kakashi was never going to be his sensei. Naruto believed that Himura Kenshin was the only sensei he had. A familiar voice said, "Hey there, kiddo," before an arm was placed over his shoulder. After giving the arm a quick glance, Naruto realized it belonged to Anko. "Hello Anko-san, do you mind removing your arm?" Anko grinned broadly and foolishly at Naruto. "Yep, I do mind." After giving her a blank look, Naruto shrugged her arm away. "Hey, don't be like that, Gaki," Naruto asked. "What is it you want, Anko-san?" Anko grinned and shrugged. "I just want to hang out, that's all." Naruto gave a nod and turned to leave. "Well, are you coming?" Anko grinned and started to follow him. "So, you never told me how you knew my name." The response from Naruto was, "You are kind of famous." Anko laughed. She wondered why anyone would bother to tell Naruto anything about anyone in the village, much less speak to him, considering how much she and Naruto were despised. "Oh, so you've heard all about me from the people around here, huh?" she asked. Anko thought, perhaps he simply overheard other people's conversations. She chose to shift the topic when Naruto failed to respond. "You know, I was one of the few ninja that the Hokage sent out to Japan to find out your identity and other information about you. That was back when no one knew you were the Batusei's apprentice. We were able to find this information since civilians were very talkative about you and your sensei. Hey, I actually thought it would be a lot harder." Anko froze in place as Naruto abruptly stopped and revealed a hint of murderous intent. "So you tortured him?" he whispered, his voice deadly. Anko shook her head quickly and extended her hands in a beseeching gesture. "And no, nothing like that. I just mean that you and your master were very popular in conversations between many civilians back at Japan. All we had to do was just listen in on these conversations, nothing drastic." After giving her a long look, Naruto nodded his head and resumed his stroll by saying, "I believe you, thanks for helping me be sent to this hellhole, by the way." Anko winced. "Oh come on Gaki, I was just doing my job, it was nothing personal. Look, I don't hold anything against you for when you killed Leaf Ninjas. I realized that you were just doing your job, so why can't you give me the same fair understanding? I didn't even realize you would be forced to come here when Naruto let out a sigh. "I understand. I'm sorry Anko-san, I just really hate this place, and I think you sometimes hate it too." Anko's expression darkened. "I know it seems really bad, trust me. I know from experience, but it's not the end of the world. I mean, I have some friends. Ria, you and I are friends too, so you're not totally alone, but sometimes Anko's expression suddenly changed. "Hey, let me help you make your stay here more enjoyable. I'll take you out to eat. Come on. You can even choose where y'all want to go to." Naruto gave her a questioning glance. "You never finished what you were about to say," he responded. "You sometimes what, Anko-san?" Anko gave a headshake. "It was nothing. I was just fixing to go on a useless dumb rant. So where y'all want to eat at? I'm hungry." Since she clearly didn't want to discuss what she had been preparing to say a while ago, Naruto chose to simply end the conversation. After giving the sky some thought, he turned to face Anko, who was waiting for his response with patience. "I suppose ramen would do." Anko gave a nod. "All right, but next time we go out to eat, it's going to be dango." Naruto gave a shrug. He then made his way to his intended location, saying, "I know of a ramen restaurant that we can go to. I used to go to it during my first years here. I might still remember how to get there." Anko trailed after him. "Lead the way." Anko smiled broadly, something she didn't often do. From that point on, Anko and Naruto would occasionally wander the streets of Konoha or go out to eat together. Occasionally, they would simply be silent until Anko naturally started a conversation. Civilians in Konoha thought that the demon brat and snake whore were conspiring to destroy the village, but those fools believed that the Hokage and the other ninjas in the Leaf could control them. However, people were a little uneasy about those two working together. Finish the flashback. When Naruto emerged from his memory lane, Anko was snapping her fingers in front of his face. Then she said, "You okay, Gaki? You kinda just spaced out on me." "I'm fine. Kakashi is going to be here very soon, so I don't really have the time to tell you the story." Sakura was relieved that Naruto would not reveal to that awful woman why she had begun referring to him as Naruto-sama. It was frightening and humiliating. Anko burst out laughing. "Ha ha ha ha. Kakashi, That's a good one, I'll have to remember to call him that next time I see him. All of a sudden, leaves and wind swirled around. Kakashi was here. Yo. Anko gave a wave. Hey Tharia Kokashi. Kakashi arched an eyebrow. What did you call me, Anko? She clasped her hands behind her back and began to whistle naively. Oha, nothing, never mind, Anko said. Kakashi gave a headshake. What are you doing here anyway? Anko grinned. Well, I was just wanting to say goodbye to my little brat. I am not yours, Naruto whispered. Anko gave Naruto a strong hug. You know you love me. Sakura gave Anko a jealous glare, but Naruto simply sighed in frustration. I have to go now, Anko-san, he uttered. Anko put her arm across his shoulder and let go of him. Just be careful, alright Gaki? I know you're the Batusei's apprentice and all, but no matter how powerful you are, you're still just a kid. Take care of yourself and don't trust those losers for a second, Anko said while pointing her finger at Team 7. Kakashi snarled. Anko, you're not being very helpful. Anko turned to Naruto and grinned at him after giving Kakashi a glare and saying, whatever, see ya around Gaki. The former Orochimaru apprentice left and returned to the village. Good riddance, a fucking snake whore, Kakashi muttered to himself. Then he turned to face his team. Alright, we're heading to Nami no Kuni. Naruto, you'll take the left side of Tazuna, while Sasuke, you will take the right. Sakura, you'll take the front and I'll take the back. Let's go, he said. Thus, Team 7's journey into Nami no Kuni commences. Birds sang, insects made their sounds, and a light wind caused the trees in the forest to appear to be moving as their leaves fluttered in the breeze. The day was bright and sunny. In the middle of this forest was a dirt path that Tazuna and Team 7 were currently walking on. At the moment, Naruto was enjoying listening to the sounds of nature all around him without any interruption from the band of idiots he was traveling with. Indeed, there was silence among all but when they first started traveling. Sakura would not stop asking Tazuna questions about Nami no Kuni. Additionally, some of these questions were dumb since they could be solved with a little common sense. Sakura, for instance, asked Tazuna if there were ninjas in the nation. She ought to have understood why Tazuna would travel all the way to Konohagakure to ask for a group of ninjas to protect him if they actually had them. Therefore, it doesn't really take a genius to realize that Nami no Kuni has neither kunoichi nor shinobi. Sakura didn't stop talking until Naruto gave her a fierce look. Kakashi narrowed one eye at Naruto after noticing the brief exchange. The Junin promised to talk about frightening his students with the young blonde later. As they passed a puddle, Naruto noticed it and prepared to repel an attack right away. That puddle shouldn't be there because it's so sunny today and it doesn't seem to have rained in days. Plus I can sense 2 key signatures hidden in that puddle as well. The enemy will probably come from there, Naruto thought. As it turned out, Naruto was correct. 2 Kirinukanen emerged from the puddle slowly and silently as soon as everyone had passed it. Since Kakashi was at the rear of the group and they saw him as the biggest threat, they went after him first. The Junin was torn to pieces as the 2 of them quickly ran up to Kakashi, wrapped a spiked chain around him, and pulled on the chain. Kakashi-sensei! Exclaimed Sakura. Both Kiri Shinobi turned to face the other members of the group. Naruto saw that both of the assailants were wearing masks of some sort. The chain they used to, supposedly, kill Kakashi was connected from one clawed gauntlet to the other between them, and he also saw that each of them had a clawed gauntlet on one hand since Sasuke threw a kunai and a shuriken to pin down the middle portion of the chain into a tree. As soon as the 2 Kirinukanen charged towards Naruto and uttered the words, 2 down, he must have also noticed this. When the Uchiha had thrown that kunai, Sakura and Tazuna had only looked at Sasuke and the 2 Kiri ninja for a moment before realizing that Naruto had just disappeared. The blonde samurai seemed to vanish as soon as everyone's gaze left him for a brief moment. Tazuna shouted, "Where did that coward go? He ran away." Sakura muttered, "I don't know." She was terrified, and her eyes were wide. Sakura was confident Sasuke could keep them all safe. However, she was also aware that Tazuna and her group stood a better chance of surviving with Naruto present. When Kakashi wasn't present, he served as the unofficial team leader. She did, however, have faith that Sasuke would eventually outshine him in terms of skill and leadership. Returning to the fight, the 2 Kiri Shinobi were attempting to free their chain from the tree, but before anything else could happen, there was a shout from above that seemed to reverberate for miles. Hidden Mitsurugi Ryu. Ryu Sui-sen. When everyone looked up, they saw a blur that appeared to be Naruto high in the sky. He was rapidly approaching one of the Kiri missing nin. When he slashed his left shoulder downward, Naruto landed in a tiny crater. The missing nin lost his left arm, which, it turns out, was the arm that wore a gauntlet as a result of Naruto's katana. The Kiri ninja barely had time to scream in pain before Naruto spun to the right and swung his sword, which he was holding in his right hand, Horizontally in the direction of the man's neck, the shinobi's head was severed completely. The dead man's body slowly fell to its knees before falling all the way to the ground as blood flew from his neck. These guys must be Chunin shinobi based on their fighting style and ki levels, Naruto thought. The other Kiri missing nin yelled, "Maizu, no!" While removing the chain from his gauntlet, he turned his head away from his fallen comrade and gave Naruto a vile glare. He screamed, "You little bastard! I'll kill you!" and rushed in a fury toward Naruto. Naruto was ready to swiftly eliminate the living Chunin Nukenin. It was not to be, though, as Kakashi instantly leapt from a tree and knocked the charging missing nin unconscious. There was silence. Sakura and Sasuke gazed in wonder and terror at Naruto. However, Naruto's interference prevented Sasuke from showing off more, which annoyed him a little. Tazuna simply stared in shock at the samurai. He was unaware that children could be so adept at killing people at such a young age. Especially ninjas. The three of them looked at Naruto for a moment before realizing that Kakashi was still alive. Let Sakura say the obvious, of course. "Kakashi-sensei. You're not dead," she exclaimed with delight. After tying the lone surviving Kiri missing nin to a tree, Kakashi turned to Sakura and grinned. "Of course, Sakura, did you really have so little faith in your sensei that you believed I would be taken down so easily?" As conceited as ever, Naruto thought, much like the Uchiha. Kakashi looked over at Sasuke. Sasuke grinned smugly, but he was still a little upset that he wasn't able to brag and join in on the action like Naruto. "Sasuke, good job. You were able to neutralize the threat that chain presented and provided a distraction so that Naruto could catch them by surprise." Kakashi looked in the direction of his female pupil. "Sakura, you guarded Tazuna even in the face of danger. That takes courage and loyalty. You did well." Sakura was beaming. Then Kakashi turned to face Naruto. "As for you, Naruto, you went overboard with what you did. There was no need for you to interfere. Sasuke could have handled the situation on his own also." And this is where Kakashi's tone became stern as he narrowed one of his eyes. "Don't you ever kill in front of my students again. They don't need to see such things yet. They're still young genin fresh out of the academy. They didn't grow up the way you did and don't need to. Do I make myself clear? Fine. But just keep in mind that you'll be at fault along with me if anything happens to these kids because you ordered me to hold back when we fight enemies who would kill us with no hesitation. Shinobi like those two Nukenin I fought would kill any of us if they could and would lose no sleep over it. Sooner or later the Uchiha and Haruno will have to face the hard cold ground of reality," Naruto continued. Kakashi snarled, "They'll face it when I think they're ready, and besides, as long as I'm around, nothing will happen to them, so there's no need for you to kill in front of them, understand?" Naruto let out a sigh. Sure, whatever, Naruto thought. He really is a fool in denial. "Good," Kakashi replied. Meanwhile, Sasuke was furious. Even though Naruto and Kakashi had resolved their dispute, he still considered Naruto to be a child, despite the fact that they were of the same age. How dare he make such a judgment about Uchiha? Being an elite Uchiha himself, Naruto was the last to die. There was Kakashi. After that he was being held back by that man despite being the final survivor of the Uchiha clan massacre. Kakashi apparently didn't believe he was prepared to kill or witness someone being killed. Thus, it would seem that Kakashi had no immediate plans to teach him anything deadly. Simply put, his sensei didn't intend to give him more power anytime soon. As a result, he would most likely need to rely more on Naruto's lessons. Sasuke wasn't really going to complain to Naruto about his meddling in the battle with those two Kiri shinobi because he was also a little bitch who was still afraid of him. Sakura concurred with Kakashi that she wasn't prepared to witness or participate in acts of murder. She was actually so naive that she thought she could fight in the ninja world without ever having to kill. In fact, she was appalled to witness someone murdering someone else. However, because Sasuke was, well, the great Sasuke, Sakura did believe that he was prepared to see such things. When Sakura posed a question to Kakashi, Sasuke emerged from his reverie. Sakura started to say, "Kakashi-sensei, how are you still alive? I could have sworn I saw you." But she was interrupted when she noticed Kakashi pointing to the location where he was allegedly ripped to shreds. As she turned to face him, she noticed that bits of a log were strewn all over the floor. Sakura thought in shock, he used a kawarimi. When Sasuke saw the pieces of a log strewn where Kakashi had pretended to be dead and understood how the Junin had done it, his eyes grew wide. Anger made him clench his fists. "It's unbelievable that I missed it earlier. I didn't understand it until he pointed it out to me. I was fooled by such a simple trick. Thus, if it is possible, the Uchiha brooded even more." Tazuna was absorbed in gazing at the ground when Kakashi turned to face her. "Tazunu-asana, we need to talk," he was saying. With a gulp, Tazuna began to perspire more than he had been doing on this mission thus far. "About what?" Kakashi squinted at the elderly inebriated man. "From what I observed, Those Nukanen were after you, Tazuna-san. They clearly were trying to ambush and eliminate me quickly before killing off the Genins. I believe they finally would have targeted you after getting rid of the rest of us. There is also the fact that you looked a lot more nervous and scared when Kakashi mentioned to Sakura that there wouldn't be any foreign ninjas on this mission when she was asking questions. It's pretty obvious that you've been keeping some important secrets from us, Tazuna-san, Naruto stated. Although Kakashi appeared irritated by Naruto referring to him as Kakashi, he reluctantly agreed with the samurai. Naruto is right, the shinobi that attacked us looked like Kiri Chunin. They're known to continue fighting no matter what. Our mission was to simply protect you from thieves or gangs. Kakashi paused for a moment to clear his throat. This mission is now at least a B rank. This was supposed to be a simple protection until you finished the bridge. I'm sure you had a reason to lie, but it causes problems when you're not truthful about the mission. As of now, we are operating outside of duties. Sakura chose to speak up because she was still a little shaken up from the battle some time ago. I don't think we're ready for a mission like this, Kakashi-sensei. Let's quit, she responded. While Naruto and Kakashi appeared unconcerned, Sasuke glared at Sakura. Wait, at least hear me out, exclaimed Tazuna. Kakashi nodded while glancing at Tazuna. Go on. Tazuna let out a sigh. You're right, I did lie about the mission. It's most likely outside of your duties. It turns out that a super dangerous man is after my life. Who? Inquired Kakashi. You've probably at least heard his name before, Tazuna remarked. He hesitated, then went on. The wealthy shipping magnate, his name is Gato. Kakashi appeared taken aback. Huh? Gato from that Gato company? He's one of the world's few extremely wealthy people, he replied. Tazuna gave a nod. Tazuna looked up at the sky, paused once more, and said, yes. Officially he runs a large shipping company, but secretly he sells drugs and other illegal items, using ninjas and gang members to take over businesses and countries. He's a very nasty man. It was about a year ago when he set his eyes on Nami no Kuni through money and violence. He quickly took control of the country's shipping industry. Gato now has a monopoly on all business traffic in the country. The only thing he fears now is the completion of the bridge that will connect Nami no Kuni to Hai no Kuni. So since you're building the bridge, that means you're in the way, Sakura replied. Sasuke questioned, so those shinobi were hired by Gato? Tazuna remained silent. But what I don't understand is if shinobi could be after you, then why did you hide that fact when you hired us? Kakashi responded. Isn't it obvious? Naruto said in his usual quiet, collected tone. Everyone's eyes were on him. This man, Gato, has obviously drained Nami no Kuni dry. The country must have been poor to begin with if Gato was able to take it over after just 1 year, so that means most everyone at that country must be poor. Tazuna-san here just simply couldn't afford a B-rank mission, he stated. After that, Naruto lit a cigarette and began to smoke it. Kakashi turned to face the elderly bridge builder. He questioned, is this true, Tazuna-san? Tazuna nodded and closed his eyes. Yes, it's true, it's all true. I see, Kakashi replied. Well, if you quit the mission now, I definitely will be killed, Tazuna replied. Kakashi began to say, Buddha, but was cut off. Don't worry about it, laughed Tazuna. If I die, my cute 10-year-old will just cry for a few days. Everyone, including Kakashi, started to perspire. Oh yeah, and my daughter will live a sad life hating Konoha ninjas forever, but it won't be your fault, not at all, Tazuna replied. Frustrated, Kakashi rubbed his forehead. Look, let me see what my team's opinion is on this before I make any decision to go forth with this mission or not, he replied. Kakashi glanced at the 3 genin he was in charge of. We're going to have a vote. Who thinks we should continue and who thinks we should go back to the village? Asked the man. Sasuke responded right away. We should move forward, he declared. I want to see how far my skill has come. With a nod, Kakashi turned to face Sakura. Sakura appeared anxious and was biting her lower lip. Really, she didn't want to go on. However, she also didn't want to impede Sasuke's progress and anger him. She therefore made the decision to act like the devoted puppy she has always been to the Uchiha. She said, I think we should continue. After that, Kakashi turned to face Naruto and awaited his response. Naruto threw his cigarette to the ground after finishing it and then stomped on it. I think we should go back. We're just genins. Thus technically we're not ready for this type of mission yet. Sakura appeared optimistic, while Sasuke appeared irritated by Naruto's response, though she wouldn't dare say it aloud. She was simultaneously annoyed by Naruto's disagreement with Sasuke. Kakashi laughed. Don't be ridiculous, Naruto. You and I know that we're both the strongest members of this little group. You just want to go back to D-rank missions. Well, guess what? You've been outvoted again, and all the rest of the members of our team will be fine. Sasuke is a Uchiha after all, and Sakura Isauma. Well, never mind, you get the point, he continued. Sakura appeared sad, but nobody seemed to care. Kakashi pivoted to gaze at Tazuna. We'll continue with the mission, but after it's finished, you'll have to pay more money to the village since this mission has been upgraded to a B rank, got it? Tazuna gave a hearty nod. He replied, yes of course. However, Kakashi was actually carrying out the mission because Sasuke wanted to continue. Kakashi didn't want to disappoint the final devoted Uchiha, thus, Kakashi would have carried out the mission even if Sasuke had lost the vote. Only his own and Sasuke's opinions were important to him. Furthermore, even though he hated to admit it, having Naruto with them increased the group's chances of surviving this mission. He was at Junin level, and the young samurai had enough strength to be at Kage level. Kakashi therefore thought that everything would be alright. However, only his own and Sasuke's lives were genuinely important to him. Kakashi pivoted to face the trio of genin once more. Now listen, there's a high possibility that there will be a stronger shinobi that will attack us. Most likely the attacker will be at Junin level, so I want all of you to be completely on your guard, okay? Sakura and Sasuke nodded, but Naruto simply did not acknowledge what Kakashi had said. He was already aware that stronger shinobi were likely to attack them. Kakashi said, alright then, let's get going. The group then proceeded. Tazuna and Team 7 were currently sailing toward Nami no Kuni after leaving Hai no Kuni on a boat in order to avoid being discovered by Gadu's men. He had the boat rower's motor turned off. The man was merely moving the boat with a sort of long paddle. This mist is everywhere. Sakura grumbled. They were surrounded by dense mist. She had to reiterate the obvious. I can't see anything. We should see the bridge soon. The rower of the boat stated. Nami no Kuni is at the base of it. After a few minutes, they discovered a massive bridge that was only partially finished. That bridge looks like it will take a few months for it to be complete, said Sakura. This mission would take months to complete because she and her team would have to protect Tazuna until the bridge was completed. That made her very unhappy, especially since there was a good chance that enemy shinobi would attack them. Naruto reasoned, so this is the bridge that will connect Nami no Kuni to Hai no Kuni and free Tazuna-san's people from Gadu's grasp. This bridge looks impressive even though it's under construction. The boat driver growled, quiet, at the girl with the pink hair. He glanced ahead and said, there's a reason why we're hiding in the mist and not using the engine. We'll all be in big trouble if Gadu finds us. Team 7 and Tazuna disembarked from the boat when it eventually docked at Nami no Kuni and began walking toward Tazuna's house along a straight, foggy path. Naruto sensed a familiar key signature as the group moved. That's not possible, Naruto thought. Is she actually there? Refocusing his attention on the key signature he was detecting, Naruto discovered that it was emanating from a nearby bush that briefly moved. Naruto thought, if that's her, then she's gotten a little sloppy at stealth. However, he chose to pretend that he was unaware of the person in hiding and continued to move. The blonde samurai was eager to see what this bystander would do. Up in the trees, Naruto suddenly detected another well-known key signature. However, this key signature felt more hostile than the others, as if the member of it was getting ready to launch an assault. With haste, Naruto removed his katana from its sheath. He didn't even try to alert the group he was with. He was confident that Kakashi could notify everyone in time. However, Naruto wouldn't mind if the one-eyed Junin perished while attempting to protect Sasuke from the impending attack. In addition, he didn't really like the prick and Kakashi wasn't useful to him. Before Kakashi heard the sound of a Zanbato blade spinning swiftly in their direction, the entire group gaped at Naruto, wondering why he had drawn his sword. Get down! Yelled Kakashi while Sakura did the same with the client. He swiftly grabbed Sasuke and struck the ground. The only person still standing was Naruto. Naruto's true sensei had previously taught him to develop new senses, like hearing. Naruto's senses, however, were not as keen as he would have preferred. He struggled to use them to find well-hidden, strong, and highly skilled ninja and samurai. However, he was mostly to blame for that since he depended too much on his key signature sense. Naruto was still proficient enough to hear the spinning of a large object approaching him. In spite of his weakness, he swiftly pivoted to confront the approaching Zanbato blade, then used his katana to deflect it higher up into a tree. On the hilt of the enormous sword, a muscular man with short black spiky hair, blue striped pants, and no shirt appeared out of nowhere. Not bad, kid. Tazuna and the rest of Team 7 quickly recovered. Naruto whispered, Momochi Zabuza. With the Zanbato sword in his hand, Zabuza leapt to the ground. So you still remember me, eh Hitakari Batuse? Naruto's eyes narrowed. I am not the Hitakari Batuse, he replied, I was just his apprentice. Zabuza laughed menacingly. That's not what the newest edition of the bingo book stated, he replied. Konohagakure may not keep tabs on Japan anymore, but that doesn't mean other shinobi villages don't as well. Zabuza appeared to be amused. Himura Naruto, given the title of Hitokuri Batuse by Japan's emperor, said he. Congratulations Gaki. Everyone, except Zabuza, looked surprised. He noticed this and smirked. Oh, none of you knew? He asked. It seems copy ninja Kakashi and his little wannabe ninjas don't even fully know who they're traveling with. Kakashi told Sakura and Sasuke to get behind him and guard Tazuna before addressing Zabuza. What do you mean about what the bingo book says? Zabuza shrugged and rested his massive blade on his right shoulder. It's not surprising that none of you know about this since the newest edition of the bingo book just came out this morning. Zabuza grinned beneath the white bandages covering the lower half of his face. But every ninja village, and I mean every singly one of them, except for Konohagakure, have that boy listed as an S-class enemy with a huge ass bounty on his head, Zabuza said. They all want him dead. Naruto's eyes widened while the rest of Team 7 gasped. Sasuke muttered, no way, what on earth did he do? Sakura pondered. Shit! Exclaimed Kakashi. Even Sanagakure? Zabuza burst out laughing, of course. Kakashi snarled. So, Suna would even risk breaking its alliance with us just to make sure one of our most important shinobi is killed, he thought to himself. But why? Why would Suna and the rest of the shinobi villages list Naruto in the bingo book as an S-class shinobi? Zabuza gave a headshake. I'm disappointed Kakashi, he said. Kakashi looked up at him with a snap of his head. You're supposed to be hailed as a genius, yet you can't even figure out something this simple. Gazing at Zabuza, the one-eyed Junin scowled. You're lying. Kakashi denied. He stated, a shinobi village wouldn't put an individual in the bingo book for no good reason, but he was obviously unable to detect any indication that the man was lying, especially Suna. Zabuza laughed menacingly once more before tossing Kakashi a copy of the most recent bingo book. His words were, see for yourself. Kakashi glanced quickly over the pages before his eyes grew wide with disbelief. Every section in here for each shinobi village has him listed as an S-class shinobi to be killed on sight. And it was accurate. There were 2 images of Naruto for every entry in the bingo book. One was a photograph of him wearing a hat and cloak, the other was a photograph of him dressed only as a samurai. When Kakashi arrived at the Sanagakure section, his face turned completely white. Even Sanagakure, he remarked. The bingo book copy slipped out of his hands and hit the floor because he was so shocked. I don't understand. Zabuza looked in Naruto's direction. At the age of only 12, this kid is already at cage level, he stated. No one in the known history of the shinobi world has ever reached that kind of power at such a young age. Beneath his bandages, the Junin Nukanen smiled sorrowfully. His sensei, Himura Kenshin, was so powerful that he was classified by the shinobi world as the 3rd man to ever be above cage level, he stated. The second being the Yondaime Hokage and the first being the Sage of 6 Paths. Kakashi appeared annoyed. He growled, what does that have to do with anything? Zabuza squinted at Naruto, but it was obvious that he was still talking to Kakashi. If the current Hitokuri Batuse is this powerful at such a young age, imagine how powerful he'll be when he's an adult, he stated. Since Konohagakure has him in their possession, the other villages feel threatened by him. At last, the Nukanen turned to face Kakashi. The shinobi villages, especially Iwa and Kumo, are apparently uncomfortable about Konoha possessing someone who surely has enough potential to be more powerful someday than even the Yondaime Hokage and the first Batuse. A realization came to Kakashi. The other shinobi villages want to make sure he's dead before he reaches his full potential. Zabuza gave a nod. That's right, he replied, and to make him even more of a threat, according to the bingo book, he's also the Jinchuriki, or what most would call the container, for the Kyuubi no Kitsune. With a sigh, Kakashi gave a nod. Yes, the Yondaime sealed the fox into Naruto when he was just a baby, he replied. After what Zabuza just said, Sakura and Sasuke would have figured it out sooner or later, Kakashi believed. It is not surprising that other villages would be aware of the demon's Jinchuriki status. Sasuke's eyes appeared to be about to pop out of their sockets due to their extreme width. He reasoned that this was the primary source of Naruto's power. Sasuke squinted at the blonde, thinking, wait, it might be a second power he has. But is the Kyuubi the reason for his strength, or is he strong on his own? Sakura was initially perplexed. She believed that Konoha's Yondaime had killed the Kyuubi. However, she began glaring at Naruto with hate in her eyes as soon as Zabuza and Kakashi's words became clear to her. Sakura thought angrily, he's the demon that killed most of my family. That bastard, she said, clenching her hands until they began to bleed. Naruto, on the other hand, didn't care what Sakura and Sasuke thought of him. He was aware that his power would simply be of greater interest to the Uchiha. He didn't care what Sakura would think of him. Sakura would follow him since the Uchiha would continue to do so. The pink-haired bitch was a faithful puppy to the Uchiha, despite her intense dislike for him. Zabuza aimed Tizuna with his sword. "Now, you have two choices, Kakashi," he stated. "You can either hand over the old man or," he said as he raised his sword at Naruto, "Konoha's little weapon can die in its early stages, along with yourself, your genin, and the old man." Kakashi stopped Sasuke from charging Zabuza. "No, Sasuke, guard Tizuna," he commanded, "he's out of your league." Sasuke gave Kakashi a furious look but grudgingly followed instructions. Team 7's Junin returned his full focus to Zabuza. "You must be very arrogant if you think you can take on a team of ninjas with not just a Junin, but also a person that is at cage level," he stated. "Leave now and you won't die here." Zabuza laughed ruthlessly. "There's one problem with that, Kakashi," he stated. Zabuza squinted and said, "The Batusei won't go all out on me, so that means he can't win. And believe me, he'll have to go all out to win." Kakashi questioned, "And why is that?" Zabuza glanced at Naruto, ignoring Kakashi's query. "Kid, you know that if you kill or permanently injure me, she will be really crushed," he replied. "That girl will probably hate you forever." Naruto's mouth fell open a little before he inhaled deeply to collect himself. "I have to admit, you're using a pretty effective tactic despite how low it is." Zabuza pierced the ground in front of him with his sword. "Well, I'm a shinobi, not a samurai," he replied. "What did you expect?" Naruto said in a softer voice, How is she?" Zabuza grinned. "Your girlfriend is still a perfect tool just like you are," he stated, and he rolled his eyes. "She misses you everyday, kid. It's always Naruto-kun this and Naruto-kun that. Don't get me wrong, she's still a quiet girl, but your name is mentioned almost every time she speaks." Naruto glared at Zabuza, a faint flush appearing on his face. "Like I've told you before, me and her are just best friends," the blonde samurai remarked. "And she's more than just a tool, she's certainly much more a greater person than you'll ever be." Zabuza said, "Ha ha ha, you got that right, Gaki." He grinned smugly and said, "It won't be too long until that girl completely surpasses me. Her potential even matches yours." "Oh, by the way," Zabuza responded, "I don't think people who are just friends hold hands all the time or cuddle together while sleeping." Naruto's face blushed more intensely. Kakashi questioned, "Naruto, how do you know this a class Kiri Nukanen? And who is this girl you two are talking about?" Zabuza cut Naruto off as he was about to respond to Kakashi. "Listen, kid, it doesn't have to be this way." Naruto blinked. Perplexed, Zabuza went on, "Join me, and you and her can be together forever," he declared. "With your power and potential combined with hers, we can take over Kirigakure and live like royalty. I don't know why you joined Konoha, but you can certainly gain a lot more if you stick with me." He laughed. "So what do ya say?" Tizuna and the rest of Team 7 were already quite anxious. They had no chance of surviving this situation at all if Naruto decided to change sides. The young samurai shook his head slowly while closing his eyes. "You honestly believe I joined Konoha willingly, Zabuza-san?" asked he. "If I had chosen to not join them, then the country I fought for in tears, sweat, and blood would have been destroyed." It was Zabuza who was shocked for the first time so far. "What?" Naruto went on. "Because of the Bakumatsu no Doran, Japan's military is very weak," he stated. "They would not be able to overcome invasion forces from Konoha and its allies if I was to abandon the Leaf Village." Before continuing, the blonde samurai lit a cigarette. "Besides, Konoha would send out a whole army of hunter nin to track me down to either kill or capture me," he continued. "So, I would have to worry about ninja from Konoha being after me along with ninja from the other villages who want me dead. That would put you and her in greater danger if I traveled with you too." At last, the Batusi opened his eyes and fixed his gaze on Zabuza. "I'm sorry, but despite what I want to," he replied, "I can't join you." Kakashi was grinning triumphantly beneath his mask at that precise moment. After giving a sympathetic nod, Zabuza assumed a combat stance. "I'm sorry too, Gaki," he uttered. "I can tell you would join me and her in a heartbeat if it wasn't for the shit you're burdened with." Zabuza had a serious expression before continuing. "I'll make your death painless and put you out of your misery, kid," he declared. "I just wish you had more of a choice though on choosing to either live or die." "You know she'll also be hurt if you end my life, Zabuza-san," said Naruto. "That's true," Zabuza replied, "but no matter how hurt she'll be after I kill you, her loyalty to me will remain unbreakable just as it has always been," he continued. "Face it, kid, if she had to choose between my side and yours, I would be the winner." Naruto gave the order, "Enough talking," in a deadly whisper. "Let us finish this." "Fine with me," Zabuza acknowledged. He rushed towards Naruto and swung his enormous sword at the samurai as soon as he got there. However, Kakashi moved ahead of Naruto and deflected Zabuza's massive sword before Naruto could do so. With only a kunai, the Junin was exerting a great deal of effort against the enormous Zanbato. Kakashi gave the order, "Naruto, help your teammates guard Tazuna. There may be more enemy shinobi hidden around here somewhere, so Zabuza could just be a distraction." Zabuza was taken aback once more. Teammates. As he gazed at Sakura and Sasuke, he thought, so, despite his abilities, Konoha has him ranked as a genin. Zabuza's sword was slightly pushed back by Kakashi. "I can handle this guy," he told his strongest genin partner. "If I somehow fail though, then it's your job to take him down." After giving a nod, Naruto moved to protect Tazuna in order to avoid being held accountable for anything. It would be ideal if the Uchiha-loving teacher were killed after all. He had instructed him to withdraw, so he was merely doing as he was told. Zabuza thought, "Shit. I wanted to kill the Batuse first so that I could use my weapon and catch up to Kakashi." He scowled. "After I kill Kakashi, it will be difficult for her to assist me in defeating the Batuse." Zabuza sighed. "I'm hoping she can pull it off." Zabuza became enraged. He disliked it when others meddled in his conflicts. Not at all, he was far more eager to battle the new Batuse than some imitator. Zabuza struggled for a few seconds before pushing Kakashi away. Zabuza growled, "Get out of the way. My fight is with the Batuse." Kakashi gave Zabuza a glare. A whisper. "Your fight is with me now," he said. "You won't live to face the demon brat." Zabuza chuckled. "Fine then," he said. "You'll make a decent challenge anyway. After I kill you, I'll have my fight with the Batuse." Slanted over his left eye, Kakashi raised his Hitai. The pupil was surrounded by 3 comma marks, and the eye itself was red. Zabuza boasted, "Oha, I get to witness the famous Sharingan," in a derisive tone. "It's such an honor." For what seemed like the 10th time today, Sasuke was taken aback. What gives him the Sharingan? He pondered. Like most Konoha residents, Kakashi is a haughty idiot, so he took Zabuza's statement that it was an honor seriously. "Yes, you should be quite honored," Kakashi replied. "I don't reveal my Sharingan eye very often." "You know, you're in the bingo book as well," Zabuza remarked. "It said that you copied over 1,000 jutsus," he replied. "Though, you're not as notorious in the bingo book as that blonde gaki you're traveling with." Zabuza grinned. "Now let's begin." Thus, a fierce Junin battle broke out between Zabuza and Kakashi. There was a good deal of psychological warfare, deceit, jutsus, and murderous intent with the exception of Naruto. The genin were in awe of the strength and skill on display. But because Zabuza used a jutsu to create the mist at the beginning of the battle, it was extremely heavy and thick. However, Naruto had to intervene once during the Junin battle. That was the moment Zabuza materialized in the center of the genins defending Tazuna. The Kiri Nukanen was cut in half vertically by Naruto before he could even swing his sword. However, the Zabuza he killed was merely a water clone, as he had anticipated. After using a jutsu to trap Kakashi in a water ball, Zabuza was standing on a lake at the conclusion of their epic battle. However, this jutsu's drawback was that the user had to grasp it with their hand. In order to prevent the Leaf Junin from escaping, Zabuza had to remain where he was while imprisoning Kakashi in a water prison. Zabuza remarked, "Now to take care of the brats." As soon as he turned to face the genin, he realized something was amiss. "Wait a second," he exclaimed. "Where the hell is the Batuse?" Naruto was nowhere to be found. For some reason only 2 genin were visible to Zabuza protecting the elderly man. Zabuza thought, "I'll have a water clone to deal with the genins. Batuse is probably under orders to protect them, so that will probably draw him out." As a result, the Kiri Nukanen created a few hand seals and used some of the lake water to create a water clone. Zabuza glanced at the 2 genin who were watching over Tazuna. "Hey, you 2 gakis wearing Hitai Atesh and pretending to be real ninjas," he replied. "But you know what? A real ninja is someone who has survived many brushes with death." The water clone started to move toward the genins like a predator until it was just a few feet from them and out of the water. "When you're good enough to be listed in the bingo book, then you can call yourself a ninja," Zabuza stated. "Even the Batuse, who is actually a samurai, is more of a real ninja than you 2. After hearing what Zabuza had just said, Sasuke lost his temper and charged at him. "No, Sasuke!" exclaimed Kakashi. "Stop!" Then Sakura shouted, "Get him, Sasuke-kun!" However, neither his personal cheerleader nor his sensei were taken seriously by the young Uchiha. He thus paid for his arrogance when Zabuza's water clone gave him a forceful kick to the face. Sasuke flew backward until he touched down beside Sakura and Tazuna. His Hitai flew off at the force of the kick and landed on the ground beside Zabuza's water clone's feet. Sasuke-kun! Exclaimed Sakura. Sasuke's Hitai 8 was severely stomped by Zabuza's water clone. Nothing but a gaki, Zabuza remarked. Sakura and Sasuke were yelled by Kakashi to take Tazuna and leave. Additionally, he informed them that the Kiri Nukanen's actual body was not far from Zabuza's water clone. Kakashi reasoned that Naruto must be getting ready to ambush Zabuza if he isn't with Sasuke and Sakura. However, Kakashi grinned and said, if he deserts us, the Leaf or other villages will hunt him down and Japan will be invaded. Even if we all perish, Konoha or another village will eventually discover that he is still alive and determine that he betrayed his community. Therefore, he is probably planning to ambush Zabuza. Unexpectedly, Sasuke spun around and began to flee. Sakura did as he always did. Even the Uchiha was aware of when to give up. Yes, he finally realized that he might not be able to compete with Zabuza and that he would perish if he continued to fight. Tazuna, on the other hand, was on his own. Sasuke and Sakura refused to put their lives in danger for an elderly alcoholic, but the two genin could only move a short distance before Zabuza's water clone appeared in front of them. He moved so quickly. Sasuke pondered. The water clone bitched Sakura across the face after punching Sasuke in the stomach, knocking him unconscious. They both struck the ground with force. Zabuza chuckled. Not only are they weak little kids, but they're also cowards, he stated. No wonder Konoha wants the Batusei so bad if this is the new generation of its ninjas. Kakashi gave Zabuza a glare. That demon brat had better move quickly, he pondered. Tazuna was trembling in terror as the water clone approached. Looks like you pissed off the wrong person, Tazuna was told by the water clone. Maybe in the next life, you'll be more careful. A katana quickly deflected the water clone's sword as it swung at Tazuna's neck. The clone was swiftly cut in half before it could recognize that Naruto was the one who had blocked him. The clone reverted to its water form. Hey, I knew you would show yourself if I attacked Tazuna and the brats, Zabuza replied. 5 Naruto shadow clones leapt out of the water surrounding him and launched a taijutsu attack before Zabuza could finish speaking. However, Zabuza was beyond the clones' reach. His Zanbato sword killed them all. However, as he killed the final shadow clone in front of him, a pillar of spinning water the size of a human fist emerged directly through the smoke the clone's disbursement had produced. Because it was behind the final shadow clone he killed, Zabuza could only just make out the pillar of water coming his way. It was concealed by that smoke too. However, he was aware that Naruto was responsible for the water attack. Damn it, Zabuza thought. By leaping over the water pillar aimed at his stomach, the Kiri Nukanen narrowly escaped the attack. However, he continued to maintain physical contact with his water prison. Zabuza was still in the air when a massive pillar of water, barely large enough to swallow a human, shot out from beneath him, just when he thought he was safe. Zabuza was struck hard by the enormous pillar of water, which lifted him into the air. After that, its upper half curved horizontally and moved in the direction of some trees. Zabuza was smashed against one. After being flung through several of them, he only briefly lost consciousness due to the agony, but he woke up a short while later when he felt a sword pierce his arms and legs. Zabuza's ribs were broken and he was now unable to move his limbs at all. Every bone in his body seemed to be broken. The former Kiri shinobi started coughing up blood, which seeped from his face's bandages. He slowly looked up to see the heavily soaked Hitakari Batusei standing above him. How? Zabuza muttered feebly. Most of my plan was full of distractions, Naruto remarked. When I killed your water clone, I was serving as a distraction. Before he began to smoke, Naruto pulled out a cigarette and lit it. When my 5 shadow clones jumped out of the water and surrounded you before attacking, well, that was also a distraction, said Naruto. And the first water attack I used served as a distraction and to get you to jump in the air. He cocked his head. I wanted you in the air so you wouldn't feel, with your feet, the huge pillar of water coming up beneath you and you wouldn't be able to dodge it either. Zabuza nodded his head slowly, and then he had an idea. Wait, but I know that you were standing in front of those brats and Tazuna, he replied. How then? Could you have been beneath me in the lake to launch your second water attack? I doubt your shadow clones could do all the kind of stuff you do with your sword. Naruto gave a shrug. There was a shadow clone beneath you that didn't attack with the others, he stated. I simply used a Kawarimi to switch myself with that specific shadow clone right after I launched my first water technique. Zabuza gave a feeble laugh. So, you've gotten good at combining your samurai and shinobi skills, he continued. I didn't factor that in my plan to defeat you. Naruto remarked. Yes, but I'm still only barely cage level. Zabuza nodded. That's still pretty impressive, Gaki, he said. So, what happens now? Now, you die, a voice said behind Naruto. The Batusei turned around to see Kakashi behind him. Zabuza once again coughed up some blood, but he stayed silent. Kakashi walked over to Zabuza and pulled out a kunai. He was going to stab the Kiri Nukanen in the neck. Kakashi didn't know though, that at that moment, he was making a grave mistake by turning his back on Naruto. As if by instinct, Naruto's grip on his katana tightened and he found himself preparing to strike Kakashi down. He could not allow this prick to kill Zabuza. That would really hurt her for some reason. He just couldn't keep himself from risking everything when he had little time to decide to either kill Kakashi and deal with the consequences of doing so or allow what little happiness and sanity a certain girl has to be ruined. However, Naruto did not need to make a decision. Two senbon needles suddenly pierced Zabuza's neck. The wounded Nukanen instantly went limp and looked dead, but his eyes were still wide open. A slim and masked ninja appeared beside Zabuza's body. This individual was wearing a navy blue yukata with light tan trimmings and a brown high-collared shirt with long sleeves. The outfit was complete with a brown obi belt tied around the waist and a pair of some sort of hakama pants that reached just above the ankles. "Thank you for defeating Momochi Zabuza," the masked ninja said before giving a short bow. "I have been waiting for the right moment to kill him for quite a while now." The person then stared at Naruto. "She's probably hoping that I play along," Naruto thought, "and of course, I'll do just that for Hera." He looked more closely at the masked Kunoichi. Even after all these years, on the battlefield, she still keeps her hair in a bun and has two thick strands of hair that fall down at the sides of her face. "You're welcome," Naruto said, "we'll leave you to your business." "Wait," Kakashi said, "you're a Kiri hunter nin." "Yes, that is correct," the hunter nin said. "I hunt down Nukanens and am part of Kirigakure's hunter nin forces." "I see," Kakashi replied. He bent down beside Zabuza's body and checked his pulse. "Yes, he's definitely dead all right." The hunter nin nodded before taking Zabuza's arm and slinging it over her shoulder. "I will dispose of the body now," she said. "Farewell." And so the hunter nin and Zabuza's corpse disappeared in a whirl of wind. Kakashi sighed heavily. He turned around and approached Tazuna and the other members of Team 7, saying, "Well, I don't know about any of you guys, but I'm tired. Come on Naruto, we need get to Tazuna's house." Naruto nodded and gave the location where the supposed hunter nin was last seen. One last glance. "Haku-chan, I hope we can see each other again soon, in better conditions." It took Team 7 an hour to arrive at a small, dilapidated house situated on a small dock encircled by water. The shore of the area Team 7 walked on was connected to the dock by a narrow walkway. This was where Tazuna lived. Kakashi knocked on his home's front door as Team 7 and Tazuna approached. He continued to hold the Hitai that Sasuke had nearly lost during the conflict with Zabuza. Sakura was happy to offer to carry Sasuke because she didn't think Naruto could handle the job because she thought he was the Kyuubi. A woman with coal-black eyes and long black hair, likely in her 20s, emerged as the door opened. She was dressed in a knee-length blue skirt and a short-sleeved pink shirt with a red collar. At the rear of the group, Tazuna grinned at the woman. "Hey, I'm back." With a sigh of relief, the woman grinned and hurried to embrace Tazuna. "Father," she cried out, "I'm so glad you're okay." As he embraced his daughter and spun her around while she clung to him, Tazuna laughed with delight. Tazuna and his daughter parted ways after a minute, and the elderly man turned to face Team 7. "Everyone, this is my daughter, Tsunami." Then Tazuna looked at his daughter and said something to her. "These are the super awesome ninjas that I hired to protect me on my way over here." Tsunami turned to face Team 7. "Thank you all so much for escorting my father," she replied. "You all must be tired and hungry. Please come inside and rest. I will make a meal for all of you." Tazuna, Tsunami, and Team 7 then went inside the house to eat and relax. Tsunami prepared a meal for Team 7 and the others, which they all ate a few hours later. Due to Nami no Kuni's condition, there wasn't much food, but it was still better than nothing. A young boy wearing a fisherman's hat entered the house from the outside just as everyone was starting to eat, and he joined them all in sitting down to eat. He was wearing a rather dejected expression, but he had never seen any of the members of Team 7, so he wasn't sure who they were. Tazuna said, "Inari, these are the ninjas that I hired to keep me safe until the bridge is complete," before turning to face Team 7. "Hey guys, this is my grandson, Inari." With a quiet voice, Sakura greeted the young child, and Kakashi waved to him. However, Naruto and Sasuke simply gazed at the boy for a brief moment before returning to their meal. Before starting to pick at his food, Inari just gave the ninjas a glare. Inari told the Leaf Ninjas, "You are all going to die. There is no way any of you stand a chance against Gato." Sasuke and Sakura glared at Inari for his remark, and everyone stopped eating except for Naruto, but it didn't seem to affect Kakashi or Naruto at all. Naruto just kept eating, and Kakashi just shot Inari a quick glance. "Inari, chastised Tsunami. He said something that startled her. Inari disregarded his mother's remarks as well as the glares from Sakura and Sasuke. He simply resumed picking at his food. With the exception of Sakura, who merely gazed at her food, everyone resumed eating. After a tense silence a few minutes later, she suddenly got up from her seat and gave Kakashi a fierce look. "Kakashi-sensei," she uttered in a furious tone. "I have some questions for you." Everyone paused their meals once more to gaze at Sakura, with the exception of Naruto. Kakashi looked curiously at the pink-haired girl. "What is it, Sakura?" Sakura's face scrunched up in anger and she pointed her finger at Naruto. "How come you never told me that this monster was the Kyuubi?" she screeched. "Why did I not know that I was on the same team with the filthy demon that killed most of my family?" Tazuna and his family were shocked and confused at the pink-haired girl's outburst. Kakashi narrowed his eye at Sakura. "We will talk about that later, Sakura," he said in a voice barely above a whisper. But Sakura was not going to accept such an answer so easily. The Kunoichi of Team 7 slammed her hands down on the table and snarled. "No," she screamed. "We will talk about this right now. I am the one that is in command here, Sakura." Kakashi scolded. "And when I say we will talk about this later, then that is what is going to happen, whether you like it or not." His voice was harsh and left no room for argument. He was giving a direct order. "Now is there anything else you have to ask me?" he asked in a more quiet voice. Sakura huffed and glared at her sensei for a few seconds before slowly sitting back down on her chair. "Yes," she finally said through clenched teeth. "Who was the masked kid that took Zabuza's body away?" Kakashi closed his eye and sat back more in his chair in a relaxed manner. "The kind of mask that kid had is worn by Kirigakure's special Hunter Nin forces," he answered. "They are also called body erasers." "Body erasers?" Sakura questioned. Kakashi nodded. "Their purpose is to completely dispose of the body without any evidence that it had ever even existed," he said. "A ninja's body has secrets of the village that an enemy could acquire." Sakura gave a sympathetic nod. "When Hunter Nins eliminate and dispose of the Nukenin who have abandoned their village, they keep critical information from getting into the wrong hands," Kakashi said. "So, basically they are guardians of their village's secrets." In Nami no Kuni, elsewhere. "Shit, Haku," was Zabuza's feeble cry. "Why do you and your boyfriend have to cause me so much pain? Those needles really hurt." Haku was lying on the ground in a little clearing in the forest when Zabuza knelt down on him. Haku had to remove the needles from the Kiri Nukenin's neck for him because he was unable to move at all, primarily due to Naruto stabbing his limbs in specific places with his katana in order for him to properly cough up blood. She also had to cut through the bandages covering his mouth. Haku begged, "Pardon me, Zabuza-sama, but it was the only way," as she started tending to his injuries. "I had to aim at your neck since it had the easiest acupuncture for me to hit." Zabuza appeared to be lost in thought as he gazed up at the sky. "Well, Haku, your boyfriend is going to make our task a little more difficult," he replied. "What is the damage he did to me?" Haku glanced at the floor. "You have several broken ribs along with some internal injuries, Zabuza-sama," she replied. She turned to face him and said, "Also, you have severe stab wounds on your arms and legs. Overall, you are not going to be able to fight for at least a month." Haku turned back to the floor. "In addition, because of the needles I hit you with, you will need an extra week to recover. I am sorry." Zabuza let out a sigh. "That boy is getting to be as dangerous as his deceased sensei," he stated. "I assume he knew who you were when you came to retrieve me?" Haku gave a nod. "Yes, Zabuza-sama, but he hadn't said anything to the ninjas he was with," she replied. "He went along with my story about being a Kiri Hunter Nin." Zabuza squinted at Haku. "You truly are the key to us succeeding, Haku," he stated. "He could have killed or permanently injured me, but he didn't." Zabuza grinned abruptly. "All because of you." Haku simply stared at Zabuza without saying anything. "Even with that advantage though, I still failed," said Zabuza. He clenched his fists in defiance and said, "But next time, you and I will succeed in killing him and then that bridge builder will die." Haku whispered, "What about the Junin and his subordinates?" Zabuza remained quiet for a while before continuing. "We will handle them somehow," he declared. "Tell me, Haku, if it ever came down to it, would you be able to help me kill the Batuse?" Haku took a deep breath, and then, as though she were about to cry, she shakily exhaled behind her mask. "Yeah, I don't know, Zabuza-sama." Zabuza let out a frustrated sigh. "That is not a good answer, Haku." Haku stammered, "I am sorry, Zabuza-sama." Zabuza snapped, "Don't start now. We need that money. Gadu will pay us. You have never disobeyed or failed me before," he said. Then Zabuza spat blood out. His voice then grew a little quieter as he said, "I already tried to convince that boy to join us. You heard what he said. We have no choice but to eliminate him, if we are to kill that bridge builder in order to get the money we need from Gato. Haku lowered her head to the floor. She begged Zabuza-sama to allow her to speak with Naruto-kun. I am confident that I can at least convince him to not get in our way. It sounded like the poor girl was about to burst into tears. Zabuza asked, you really believe that you can succeed where I have failed, Haku? I just know he will listen to me, Zabuza-sama, Haku declared resolutely, I just know it. Before he spoke, Zabuza remained silent for 30 seconds. Fine, he replied. Haku let out a sigh of relief before Zabuza went on. You will have a few months to convince your little boyfriend to stay out of our battle against the rest of the Konoha ninjas, he stated. During these few months, you and I will train hard, when we can, to prepare for our upcoming battle with them. Before continuing, Zabuza glanced up at the sky once more. The other, and main, reason we will be training hard is in case you are not able to sway the Batusei to stand aside. Haku gave a nod. Her words, I understand, Zabuza-sama, thank you very much. I don't think your task is going to be easy though, even if it's you who will be trying to convince him, said Zabuza. He is apparently being forced to serve Konoha, so he can keep Japan safe. Not only that, but if he betrays the leaf, then he will be tracked down by a lot of their hunter nins. Then he will also have less protection against the other villages that want him dead. Before continuing, Zabuza's eyes narrowed in contemplation. The Batusei is trapped in a quiet corner. Haku gave another nod of her head. I will find some way to help him and ourselves, Zabuza-sama, she replied. I just need some time. Well, I hope you do find a way for our sake, Haku, Zabuza replied. And I hope that a few months will be enough. It won't be too long until that bridge is complete. Whispering, it will be enough, Haku said, it will be. At Tezuna's house again, after Tezuna had just finished telling his family what had happened to him and the group of ninjas he had traveled with since returning from Konoha to the house, they were all in. Everyone had finished eating. Tsunami gave Naruto a startled and terrified look. Soa, you really killed a powerful ninja and then defeated even a stronger one? She inquired. Buddha, you are so young. Naruto gave a shrug. The one I killed was just a chunin, but not a powerful one, he replied. And I'm sure that Kakashi could have handled the stronger one just as well as I could. Kakashi squinted at Naruto, wondering if the blonde was joking about that last remark. Tezuna chuckled. Don't be so modest, kid, he yelled. What you did was incredible. It's only because he's a demon, Sakura growled, giving Naruto a vile glare, and I'll tell you something else about Hima. Beneath the table, Sasuke gave Sakura a forceful kick to the ankle. He gave her a scowl. When she turned to face him in terror, she knew right away to keep her mouth shut. Sasuke was worried that Sakura would begin disclosing details that Naruto had previously shared with him and her, like the fact that he had previously had contact with his older brother after their first team meeting. She might even begin to tell Kakashi about Naruto's beating of her. Naruto getting into serious trouble was something Sasuke could not afford. The blonde had to train him. If Naruto was imprisoned, that most definitely would not be possible. There would probably be less time for Naruto to train him, even if he had just been removed from Team 7. Naruto was aware that Sasuke would behave in this manner. He wasn't concerned about Sakura because of this. When it came to keeping her silent, Sasuke would take care of everything. Sakura, Kakashi uttered in a foreboding tone. Normally, he would concur with Sakura's assertion. However, he had to pretend that he didn't despise Naruto in front of him. Even if he had instructed Sakura and Sasuke to keep it a secret, there was always a chance that they would tell Naruto, so he couldn't even confide in them about his true feelings for the blonde. Sakura may have told Naruto because she wished to harm him in some way, or Sasuke may have told because of his devotion to the blonde, which Kakashi disapproved of. She appeared to have a large mouth as well. Additionally, the Hokage would be extremely upset if Naruto ever revealed to him that Kakashi detested him. The Leaf Junin had to do everything in his power to prevent the blonde from even suspecting his true feelings for him. However, try is the crucial word. Tsunami questioned, Naruto-san, is it true that you are the Kyuubi? Since Sakura's outburst about the blonde samurai being the Kyuubi, she seemed perplexed about him. How is that possible? She asked. Tsunami, Tezuna, and Inari were now looking at the blonde samurai with a weary expression. They simply didn't understand Naruto, but they were certain that he had a perfectly reasonable explanation. Naruto spoke before Kakashi could respond to Tsunami's query. He declared, Sakura is just a dumb gaki, as though it were a given. She is not the most reliable person to come to for information on such things. In fact, she is probably the last person you would want to receive advice from on anything. However, the blonde went on before Kakashi could chastise Naruto for insulting Sakura. 12 years ago, a gigantic demon, known as the Kyuubi no Kitsune, headed straight towards Konohagakure. He continued, Many of Konoha's ninjas had died trying to prevent the demon from reaching their precious village and destroying it. As if by instinct, Naruto reached for a cigarette and lit it, but he refrained because it was likely that Tsunami and her family would not like smoking in their home. However, he wouldn't have given a damn if they were from Konoha or not. Naruto would be more genuinely courteous to Tazuna and his family, though, because they were not actually from Konohagakure or even Hai no Kuni. Before continuing his tale, the blonde samurai cleared his throat. Just when all hope seemed lost for Konoha, the Yondaime Hokage appeared before the great beast. After an epic battle between the two, the man sacrificed his life to defeat the demon. Buddha, what does that have to do with you? Inari questioned. The young boy appeared to be quite perplexed. Naruto glanced in Inari's direction. The Sandaime Hokage had the people of the Leaf who weren't old enough to remember that night, including most people outside of Konoha, to believe that the Yondaime killed the Kyuubi no Kitsune. Naruto's gaze shifted to Sakura and Sasuke. So, that means people who weren't even born at that time or were just infants wouldn't know the truth of Kyuubi's fate. Tazuna questioned, so then what really happened? The truth is that the Yondaime used a special shinobi technique to seal the demon into me, replied Naruto. Then he gestured to Sakura. Ever since then, people in Konoha have treated me the same way you have seen her treat me. Then Naruto shrugged. People at Konoha simply don't understand that me and the Kyuubi are not the same being. Just as a glass with water in it is not just one whole thing, but two separate pieces of things. Most of the time, though, I would be treated worse, such as being chased by mobs and beaten to near death or being kicked out of stores. I was frequently forced to live off the garbage in the streets. Tazuna, Tsunami, and Inari appeared appalled by Naruto's treatment, but they couldn't help but feel a little scared because of the Kyuubi that was sealed inside of him. Did you not have family to look after you? Inari inquired. No, not until I was 4 years old when my uncle finally found me and took me away from Konoha, Naruto replied. But that is another story. So why are you currently serving Konoha? Confused, Tsunami inquired. Since Naruto remained silent, Kakashi chose to respond on his behalf. I'm afraid that is confidential, he said, but Naruto has people in Konoha that are attached to him, like our Sandaime Hokage. Nowadays, more people in Konoha, including myself, have no animosity toward the boy. Kakashi then glanced at Naruto, seemingly advising him to keep his true motivation for serving Konohagakure a secret, just like he did with Zabuza. Since he had overheard the conversation between the blonde and Zabuza, Tazuna knew the true reason why Naruto stayed with Konoha, but he didn't think it was his place to discuss or argue with the Junin about it. Tsunami and Inari felt that something was off with Kakashi's response. Sasuke's attention was fixed on Naruto. He didn't give a damn about how Konoha's people had mistreated Naruto in the past. All that mattered to him was the samurai's strength. So, is your true power coming from the Kyuubi? Do you rely on it exclusively? Sasuke inquired. No, not at all, Naruto said with a composed shake of his head. In fact, I have never even used the Kyuubi's power. I have no idea how. As he squinted at Naruto, Kakashi thought, and that power will serve Konoha. Someday you will know, demon brat. How can I be sure you're telling the truth? Sasuke asked. The Kyuubi's power felt malicious and evil, replied Naruto. When I fought and defeated Zabuza and one of those Chunin, you would have felt such power if I had always relied on the Kyuubi. Naruto's knowledge of the Kyuubi did not surprise Kakashi in the slightest. The Sandaime had told him that Kenshin had told Naruto everything he knew about the Kyuubi, but neither Kakashi nor the Sandaime knew how Kenshin had discovered this information prior to finding the blonde ninja from the elemental countries had not begun fighting in Japan until after Naruto was removed from Konoha. Additionally, the Sandaime informed Kakashi that Himura Kenshin was actually related to Uzumaki Kushina in some way, making him Naruto's uncle. Based on this information, Kakashi and the Sandaime theorized that the main reason Kenshin removed Naruto from Konoha was because he discovered their relationship. Given that Kushina had a large mouth, particularly during her pregnancy with the boy, and that she would have undoubtedly told her entire family about the child she was about to give birth to, Kenshin would have been aware that Naruto existed to some extent. After staring at Naruto for a while, Sasuke nodded slowly. You make a good point, he said. I will believe you for now. Naruto gave Sasuke a nod in return, saying, very well. No rational justification for Naruto's condition could ever make Sakura stop glaring at him with hatred. Sakura would never stop detesting Uzumaki Naruto. Kakashi's eyes widened in surprise. Obviously, why hadn't I considered it earlier? Thought of what? Sasuke inquired. Hunter nins are known to always dispose of the body of the person they terminate right where he or she dies, Kakashi stated. but the hunter nin that supposedly killed Zabuza didn't dispose of his body on the spot. How is that related to anything? Sakura asked with annoyance. Sasuke tried to not show his confusion about what Kakashi was saying. He wasn't going to voice his bewilderment out loud like Sakura did. He thought of himself as an elite Uchiha. Thus it would not be proper for him to show such behavior, so he acted like he knew what Kakashi was talking about. Seeing that Sakura was perplexed by his words, Kakashi chose to address her as though she were a simpleton. So, how did that supposed hunter nin dispose of Zabuza's body? How are we supposed to know? Sakura let out a frustrated hiss. Zabuza's body was taken by that masked freak. Naruto narrowed his eyes slightly at Sakura, but he chose to not respond to what she just said. For now, in terms of skill, intellect, and understanding of the world, Sakura was just a little insect compared to Haku. It was only words that Sakura had just used, after all, just words. However, the reason that Naruto didn't accept disrespect from Sakura and Sasuke, such as calling him Dobi, was because he needed to establish complete dominance in the group as their leader. Upon knowing the personality of Sasuke and Sakura, Naruto knew he couldn't play nice if he was to lead and manipulate them. Not for his intended purpose. Besides, what was wrong with freaks anyway? They certainly were more interesting than boring and normal people. Kakashi sighed. If that freak, as you call him, Sakura, needed proof of his kill, he could have just cut off Zabuza's head and took it with him, he said. And he only used simple needles to kill Zabuza. As his eyes widened in realization, Sasuke was unable to contain his surprise. It can't be, he said. With a slow nod, Kakashi said, yes, I'm afraid so. What do you all want to say? Tazuna inquired. After a brief period of silence, Kakashi responded to Tazuna's query. Zabuza is alive. Team 7 was in the middle of a forest the following morning, not far from Tazuna's home. Following Kakashi's announcement yesterday that Zabuza was still alive, he finally decided that it would be best to get his team ready for their impending fight with him and his accomplice. Sakura and Sasuke were the ones who most needed to be ready. Indeed, Naruto noticed that Kakashi had dispatched a messenger hawk to Konoha later yesterday to ask for an Enbu squad to retrieve the Chunin missing nin that Team 7 had defeated. Kakashi said, okay, before I started your training, I want to talk to you three about chakra, which ninjas use. Naruto, the Hokage had told me that you have some ninja skills and that you learned them from ninjas who fought with you during Japan's civil war. Kakashi said, are you familiar with the concept of chakra? Naruto nodded his head, wearing his typical samurai attire, which always included a black hakama pants, a full-length black kimono, and a blood-red haori over the kimono itself. The outfit he had on during the battle with Zabuza was still wet, so he needed to wash and dry it. Luckily, he was aware of sealing scrolls and had one with him that held everything he would need for this mission, including extra clothing, and the previous outfit was sealed up in another scroll. He still had his Sugagasa hat, but it wasn't even wet, as he had dropped it prior to carrying out his plan against Zabuza, and he had just picked it up as he began to leave the area with the client and the rest of Team 7. With a mocking smile, Kakashi said to Naruto, well, if you really do know what chakra is, then go ahead and explain it. Chakra is the energy a ninja uses to perform a jutsu, Naruto said with a shrug. And what else can you tell me about chakra? Kakashi asked, nodding his head. Chakra is actually made up of two parts, Naruto said, removing a pack of cigarettes from the small box they were in, lighting one, and taking a drag before putting the small box away and responding to Kakashi's query. Body energy is the first component. Every single one of your cells contains it. Kakashi gave another nod and gestured for Naruto to go on. According to Naruto, the second part is spiritual energy, which is acquired via experience and training. Chakra is made up of these two components. With a frustrated sigh, Kakashi hoped Naruto would be wrong so he could mock him and, as he thought, knock him down a peg or two. That's a correct, Naruto, he said. However, I didn't anticipate that you would be precisely correct, he said. A ninja uses a jutsu by bringing out and releasing chakra. This is accomplished by creating a seal with his or her hands. Why is a lecture on chakra necessary? We already know how to use a jutsu, inquired Sasuke. Wrong, Kakashi remarked, none of you are using chakra properly. After a brief period of silence, Kakashi went on, saying, look, none of you are using chakra to its full potential. As Naruto explained a while ago, releasing chakra means to bring out physical and spiritual energy and mix them within your body. Based on the jutsu you use, the type and amount of chakra that's released will be different, Kakashi said, turning to face his team. Even if you release a large amount of chakra, the jutsu will be weakened or not work at all if you don't have proper control over your chakra. I see, Sasuke replied. Without the proper control over my chakra, I would be wasting energy, which would keep me from fighting as long. Very good, Sasuke, Kakashi said, grinning at the Uchiha. Yes, such weaknesses would appear. Sakura grinned sadly and thought, Sasuke-kun is so smart and he figured something out before that stupid demon did. She glared at Naruto, but soon became enraged when she saw that he was merely smoking a cigarette and staring off into space, seemingly unconcerned with what Sasuke had to say. Sakura abruptly remembered the current circumstance before she could consider Naruto any further. So, what should we do? She questioned Kakashi. You three are going to learn how to control Ida through intense training, replied Kakashi. How? Sakura wanted to gain the strength to kill Naruto in order to exact revenge on her family, and she wouldn't mind exacting revenge on him for beating her up one day. Kakashi responded, tree climbing, as though it were the most straightforward response possible. An irritated Sasuke finally broke the long silence by saying, Buddha, we already know how to climb trees. Yes, but can you do it without your hands? Kakashi asked, nodding his head. With the exception of Naruto, everyone was taken aback by Kakashi's response. A tree behind him was approached by Kakashi, who did a ram hand seal before walking up it without using his hands and hanging high from a large branch that protruded from the tree before anyone could comment. While Sakura and Sasuke were taken aback by Kakashi's power, Naruto appeared unimpressed and continued to gaze into space. Are you getting it now? Kakashi smiled at his team and said, once you're proficient with chakra, you'll all be able to do this. You have to gather chakra in the bottom of your feet and climb up a tree. Sakura gave Naruto a fierce look while whispering to Kakashi, how is climbing a tree meant to strengthen us? I don't want to be weak anymore, she said. Sasuke arched an eyebrow, surprised that Sakura of all people would say something like that. Sakura's attitude also caught Kakashi off guard. He was waiting for her to start complaining and screeching loudly, but instead she seemed really focused on becoming stronger. When he saw the fierce glare she was giving Naruto, he made a snap judgment about her actions. So, she wants to get stronger so that she can kill the demon brat and avenge her family, Kakashi thought, and maybe it was best that she found out about him. If she hadn't been such a weak fangirl before, I would try to take her off the path of revenge right now, but it seems like the most effective motivation she can use to get stronger. I'll guide her away from her revenge when she's a strong kunoichi, and hopefully she will still train hard after that. She'll never stand a chance against the monster no matter how hard she trains. Unlike Sasuke, I just need to make sure she never tries to kill Naruto. I can't allow a councilwoman's daughter to be killed, even if she wasn't under my watch. But then again, I doubt that demon would even fight back given the consequences. Kakashi's eye narrowed as he had another thought. Sensei? Oh, right, Kakashi said, glancing down at Sakura. Anyway, this training will make you stronger by helping you learn how to control your chakra, he said, crossing his arms as he hung from a tree branch. I apologize, I got lost in my thoughts. This is because you will all be attempting to bring the right amount of chakra to the right area. This can be challenging for even a proficient ninja. Sakura glared at Naruto and clenched her teeth in determination as Kakashi paused his speech to notice that she appeared nervous for a brief moment after his previous statement, but that nervousness was quickly replaced by a strong resolve. Before continuing his explanation, Kakashi reasoned, maybe she won't be such a fangirl anymore. The amount of chakra to be used for climbing a tree is small, but it needs to be exact. Additionally, it is said that the hardest place to gather chakra is the bottom of the foot. Sakura and Sasuke appeared extremely determined by this point. Kakashi stated, so theoretically, if you're able to learn this control, then you should be able to master any jutsu, but in order to control chakra correctly, you must build up sufficient stamina depending on the jutsu you employ. Controlling your chakra can be quite challenging. As Kakashi explained, Sakura began to make her way to a tree to train. Hold on, Sakura, Kakashi said with a laugh. I'm almost done explaining about this training. You'll soon have your opportunity. Glaring at Kakashi, Sakura said, hurry up. Sakura's new behavior amused Kakashi, who grinned beneath his mask. Even when a ninja is in battle and moving frequently, he will most likely be gathering his chakra, he explained. Controlling chakra in such situations can be even more difficult. 3 kunais were removed by Kakashi and hurled at the genin, each of which lodged in the ground in front of a team 7 member. So, from this tree climbing, you need to gain enough stamina for this proper control, Kakashi explained. Mark how high you make it up the tree with the kunais. After that, the 3 of you will use that mark as a benchmark and try to exceed it. Sakura and Sasuke stooped to retrieve the kunai from the ground in front of them. Kakashi cautioned, get a little momentum and then try running up the tree. Don't expect to walk up a tree on your first try, you get it? Sakura and Sasuke nodded, Then each selected a tree and attempted to run up it after performing a ram hand seal and accumulating chakra in their feet. Sasuke was blasted off after only a few steps up the tree, but he managed to mark the spot a few inches above where he was launched from with his kunai. That's what happens if I use too much chakra, Sasuke thought. So I bet the opposite is that if I use too little chakra, then I'll just slip off. The tree climbing exercise, however, was completely easy for Sakura, who managed to reach the very top of the tree and was now standing on a large branch. Sakura would be flaunting her achievement and attempting to attract Sasuke's attention right now if she were the same girl she was before learning about Naruto's illness. Sakura, on the other hand, just silently watched Sasuke's attempts at Kakashi's exercise because she was too preoccupied with exacting revenge and growing stronger. Sakura thought, "This exercise was too easy for me. Sasuke-kun should have reached a higher spot than I did because he is much stronger than me right now." She glanced at the tree she was walking on. "Well, it seems Sakura is the best at controlling chakra," said Kakashi. "Her control and stamina are very efficient." For a brief moment, Sasuke glared at Sakura while clenching his fist. Then, in frustration, he turned his glare to the ground. Sakura, however, was too preoccupied with thinking about Kakashi's tree climbing exercise to notice Sasuke's glare. "I suppose the Uchiha clan isn't really worth very much after all," Kakashi told the truth. Actually, Kakashi was essentially a fan of Uchiha and was merely attempting to inspire his favorite pupil, even though it was painful for him to have to use such blasphemous language. "You are not telling the whole truth." Curious, Sasuke halted his attempt to run up a tree and listened to the potential argument between Naruto and Kakashi. Kakashi turned to face Naruto and asked, "What do you mean?" With smoke streaming from his lips and momentarily masking his face, Naruto took a drag from his cigarette and exhaled, saying, "You are holding Sakura back by trying so desperately to boost her ego and motivate Sasuke. She's not as strong as you're trying to make her out to be," Kakashi said, narrowing his eye at Naruto, but the blonde samurai simply ignored it and went on. "You are not telling the whole truth." Sakura swallowed hard and got ready to say something she was really hesitant to say after realizing what Naruto was referring to. He's right. Sakura's reaction surprised Kakashi and Sasuke, who had not anticipated it. "So, she must be really determined after all if she would actually agree with me," Naruto said, narrowing his eyes in contemplation. "What?" Kakashi inquired, startled. "Sensei, it doesn't make any sense that I would be better than Sasuke when he's obviously stronger than me." Sakura sighed. "I know that right now, I'm weak," she said. She glared at Kakashi, saying, "You know why, but you're not telling me. For whatever reason there has to be a logical explanation for why I have an easier time with this exercise than he does. I must get to know Sensei in order to strengthen myself and address any areas of weakness." At last, Sakura turned her gaze away from Kakashi and begged, "As your pupil, I demand to know why you keep things like that from me." "Well, that plan is gone. Damn you, demon brat," Kakashi thought. "I wanted to keep Sasuke motivated by making him think that someone as weak as Sakura is stronger than him for a brief period of time." "All right," Kakashi reluctantly replied, "because you have so little chakra inside of you. You have better chakra control. However, Sasuke will find this exercise more difficult because he has more chakra than you do." As I should have known, Sasuke thought. An Uchiha will always be superior. He was much less frustrated now than he had been. In fact, he had a small smile on his face. Sakura said, "Okay," then turned her gaze to the ground and pondered for a few moments before turning back to Kakashi. "Kakashi-sensei, if this exercise can improve someone's chakra control, can it also improve someone's chakra reserves?" "Yes," Kakashi replied, nodding his head. "You will be depleting your chakra reserves by running up and down the tree all the time. Simply run up and down a tree until you're too exhausted to continue. However, if you overdo it, chakra exhaustion could cause you to faint. Your chakra reserves ought to rise by a specific amount once they are restored." Sakura said, "Thank you, Kakashi-sensei," nodding her head in agreement before following Kakashi's instructions to repeatedly run back down and up the tree. After descending his tree, Kakashi turned to face his strongest genin and said, "Naruto, why don't you perform this exercise like your teammates do?" With a shrug, Naruto said, "I already know how to do tree walking." Kakashi's visible eyebrow went up. "Oh, is that correct? The Hokage informed me that you had informed him that you could perform this exercise," he inquired. "However, you have never demonstrated to him or to me that you are capable." "I don't think so. Therefore, you won't have any problems proving it to me at this time if you can do it as you say." After a few moments of staring at Kakashi, Naruto tossed his cigarette to the ground and stomped it out before slowly making his way to a tree and just walking up it until he reached the very top, just like Sakura did. Naruto was now perched atop a sizable branch that protruded from the tree. Sakura and Sasuke were furious. Sakura was upset that Naruto could complete the exercise more easily than she could, but in the past, she would have been more upset that Naruto could outperform Sasuke. The Uchiha was upset that he had finally had the opportunity to outperform Naruto, only to discover that the blonde had already outperformed him. He was simply irritated that Naruto was so much stronger at his age. Naruto was primarily trained as a Japanese samurai, not a ninja, so neither Sakura nor Sasuke anticipated that he would be able to walk trees. Kakashi was taken aback and honestly told Naruto that he didn't think the blonde would be able to train and fight as a fully fledged Japanese samurai while also learning enough about how shinobi fight to be able to stick to trees and other surfaces using chakra. Calmly, "There is your proof," Naruto stated after a few more seconds of silence during which he gazed at Naruto in shock. Kakashi narrowed his eyes and said, "You're dismissed from this exercise," in an irritated tone. "However, I think it's time we have a talk privately." Naruto simply walked down his tree without responding to Kakashi's statement, and when he got to the ground, he moved in Kakashi's direction until he was standing a short distance ahead of him. "Sasuke, keep doing this exercise until you have mastered it," Kakashi said, turning to face Sakura and Sasuke, who were watching their exchange. "Sakura, you are also excluded from this exercise, just like Naruto. However, if you'd like, you can use this exercise to boost your chakra reserves." Sakura simply nodded before continuing to repeatedly run up and down a tree without objecting or questioning. Kakashi the Uchiha also returned to the tree climbing exercise. Kakashi started to leave the area where his genins were currently training. "Follow me, Naruto." After walking a short distance away from Sakura and Sasuke to a place where no one could overhear their conversation, Naruto followed Kakashi. Kakashi quickly turned to face his pupil and said, "Naruto, who was it exactly that taught you ninja techniques?" "I was lucky enough to come across certain ninjas who were willing to teach me, as well as show me scrolls," Naruto said, clearing his head before responding to the question. "As you should know, different sides had the assistance of ninja," he said. Naruto was not surprised that Kakashi asked him this question. In fact, the only thing that surprised him was that the man hadn't asked him sooner. Even though the Hokage had asked him the same question earlier, they hardly ever showed samurai anything, but I seized the opportunity when I did. "That Kage Bunshin technique you used in D-rank missions, that's a jutsu only taught to Leaf Ninja," Kakashi said. His eyes narrowed and his voice harsh and cold. "And I'm sure most of the ninja that shared such knowledge were Nukenin. Not just any Leaf Ninjas, but those who advanced to Junin rank," Kakashi growled at the end of his sentence, revealing a hint of murderous intent. "So I know you learned it from a high-level Nukenin." The Junin was extremely irritated by Naruto's lack of display of nervousness, as the demon child simply kept staring at him while pretending to be calm as if they were discussing the weather. Following a protracted silence, Kakashi finally asked the question he had been dying to ask. "Naruto, who taught you that technique?" Since his so-called team's first D-rank mission, the blonde samurai had been ready for that question, and once more, he was shocked that he hadn't been asked sooner. Itachi, who had taught him that technique, had long ago told him the truth about the Uchiha clan massacre, how Danzo and the other elders of Konoha had ordered him to kill off his entire clan because he feared that the Uchiha would start a village-wide uprising. Naruto also knew that Itachi had left Sasuke alive, not only leaving a witness to identify the murderer, but also defying orders. The advisors, in an attempt to conceal the truth about the Uchiha clan massacre, succeeded in making the populace of Konoha believe that Itachi had gone insane. However, this was not the only reason why the clan murderer was labeled a Nukenin. It was also because Itachi had defied their orders and left the village with extremely sensitive information that could destroy them, as the rest of Konoha's people, particularly the rest of the council, would turn against them in a heartbeat for daring to touch the great Uchiha clan, even though they were traitors. In fact, Itachi had told Naruto a lot of what he knew, including the true reason he left his frail younger brother alive and the reasons he shielded him by threatening Danzo and the other elders with going public with all he knew if even one finger was placed on him, in addition to asking the Sandaime Hokage to watch out for Sasuke.
That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this great story. See you in the next one.